I realized throughout the years that really the most important thing, one of the most important things we can be in our lives is ourselves. And that's it's so easy to say, just be you, man, be you. But it's fucking hard, right? Because there's perception, there's reality. You want to look a certain way. You're a little better today than you were yesterday. You wake up tomorrow. Let's be better tomorrow than you were today. Don't think about this as a loss. You're going to learn. And if at least I fail, then I fail being myself.
Hi guys and welcome back. In today's project we're going to be doing some web scraping, which means accessing a website, getting its contents, and then trying to understand it with Python so that we can extract some data. Websites all use HTML as the language of the text that we will be extracting. So we're going to understand what HTML is so that we can then use Python to understand what it means and we can extract some data with it. HTML is a markup language. Markup languages are used to annotate text in some way so that a computer can understand it. And HTML is a markup language because the annotations that it uses allow the computer to glean the structure of a web page and understand sort of what elements go inside what other elements and how the hierarchy of the website appears. Here's a simple web page's HTML. Now, this may not look terribly simple, but we're going to sort of deconstruct it over the next few slides as well and show you what it all means. You can see there's a lot of angled brackets or crocodile clips throughout this code, and at the very top we've got something that looks like a less than, exclamation point, doc type, HTML, greater than, and that is an HTML tag. This one particularly is a label that lets the computer know how to read the rest of the document. Essentially, it tells the computer, this is an HTML document, and you should read it as an HTML document. Then, for example, we've got the start of the HTML tag, and we're going to look at what tags are, but you can see that there's another crocodile clip, less than, HTML, and then there's some sort of lang equal en, and then a greater than again. At the very end, we've got the closing tag pair, which is essentially identical, but without the lang equal en, and also it has a forward slash at the beginning. You'll see throughout the document that there are other tags, for example this head tag, that doesn't have lang equal en, but it has a closing tag that is quite similar. We've got the forward slash head, and here it's the same but without the forward slash. So we're going to look a bit more into what tags are. This example is a bit simpler. We've got a div tag, that is the opening tag at the start and the closing tag at the very end with the forward slash in the front. Inside the div, we've got a p tag, that is for paragraph. And inside that, we've got some text. HTML uses this sort of structure where tags are inside of tags to define the structure of the page or the hierarchy of the page, which elements are inside which, and which elements are beside which. There's also HTML attributes. We can define values associated to names in each tag, as we've seen with the lang equal en just a moment ago. Different attributes have different meaning, and there's a lot of them that we can use, but class and ID are the two most popular ones, and they allow us to refer to specific tags a bit more easily when we use CSS. Here's, for example, some code that uses HTML attributes. The h1 tag inside the body tag has a class equal to header and an ID equal to page title. Notice that we've also got a closing h1 tag at the end of the line, and inside the tag we've got some text. So here we've got quite a lot of things going on, the two attributes class and ID, as well as the text inside the h1. H1, by the way, stands for header 1, so here this HTML code would be representing some sort of title on a web page. CSS is another language used to define the look and feel of HTML documents. So as we've learned, HTML is used to annotate text to tell the computer the structure of the page, which elements are inside which or beside which. CSS is used to define the styles, where color some things are going to be, or where they are going to be positioned inside our browser window. And to define which elements will receive which styles, we use CSS selectors. So here's some HTML code with some attributes. Some elements have some attributes, other elements don't have any attributes. We're just going to guide you through some common ways of selecting elements inside an HTML document using CSS selectors, and then we could use CSS to apply specific styles to those elements. For example, if we simply use the body CSS selector, i.e. we create the HTML document and then we create a CSS code, and inside CSS we type body, then we will be able to use CSS to apply styles to this element. In this case, CSS selector of body simply refers to the tag body, therefore the entire document in this case. We're not going to learn in this presentation how to apply styles to a tag. That's for another CSS lecture, but nonetheless, this is how we can select elements using CSS. When we come to web scraping, we're going to be using CSS selectors to find specific elements on a page, so that's why this is important. If we use, for example, h1, then we will be referring to the title in this case. So as you can see, if we simply type something out, like body or h1, CSS is going to select the tag or tags that have that name, body or h1 in this case. However, for example, if we wanted to refer to the tag with ID of page title, which is this h1, we could do hashtag page title. And that would tell CSS to go and find any tag, it doesn't have to be an h1, that has an ID of page title. If we go for the p tag, though, we would be selecting this element here, p with class of subtitle, as well as the one inside the main tag. Both of these are paragraph tags or p tags, therefore they would both be selected if we use that CSS selector. If we just go for .subtitle though, that would give us any element on the page with a class of subtitle. ID attributes are normally unique on a page, but class attributes are normally not unique in a page, so therefore doing .subtitle might give us multiple elements. Similarly, we can select a specific tag name that has a specific class name. For example, p.subtitle altogether gives us the same paragraph tag in this case, but it would give us any paragraph tag that has a class of subtitle. Note that there is no space between the p tag and the .subtitle in this case, because spaces actually mean something else. Here, for example, we've got main space p, and what that does is it tells CSS to select the p tags that are inside a main tag. In this case, that's only the one shown there. Note that all of these tags are inside the body tag. So in every case in these selectors that we've shown, we could always do body space h1, for example, or body space hashtag page title, for example, and those would be totally valid. However, it is not necessary to define the whole hierarchy in a CSS selector. We just need enough so that we can select the elements we want. Alright, now that we know a little bit more about HTML and CSS selectors, let's go and do some web scraping.
If you have a dream, even if it's not football, if you have a dream, you have to do everything you have in your energy to achieve that, because nobody will believe in you more than you. You have to believe, because in the life you never know what can happen, and you can live your dream like I do.
Hi and welcome back. In this lecture we're talking about understanding HTML with BeautifulSoup. Now that we understand the structure of HTML, we can tell Python how to understand it as well and how to extract some data from it. Because HTML is so structured, always with its opening and closing tags, it's fairly straightforward to get data out of it. And as addition, as part of this lecture, we're also going to install our first library. Because Python doesn't come with any functionality to understand HTML, we need to install a library from the outside in order to do that. There are a lot of Python libraries. It's one of the Python's strengths, actually, in order to do all sorts of things. And understanding HTML is one of these. There are other libraries for things like doing web development, data science, showing up windows on your monitor, and things like that. There's loads of libraries, and we're going to install one. In order to install your library, we have to go over to PyCharm and find your preferences. In Mac, it's under PyCharm Community Edition Preferences, and I believe on Windows it's under File, and it's down here somewhere at the bottom. So if you go to your preferences, then you'll be greeted with this window that that you may have seen before. And in here, there's one section that's particularly important for installing libraries, and this is your project. In your project, you can choose your project interpreter, and here you'll see the current version of Python that you are running. So as you can see, I'm running 3.6.0 because there's not that many difference between 3.6.0 and 3.6.4, which is the current version. But if you're using 3.7 or something like that, you'll see that here. Then down here, you'll see all the libraries you've got installed. It's possible that this will be empty because you've just started your Python journey and you don't have many things installed, and that's fine. Now, there are other ways of installing libraries other than through PyCharm, and we are going to learn how to use those other ways, but not in this video. We're going to keep it simple for now, and in this section, we'll just stick to installing things through here. Just press the plus icon, and here you can see all of these things are Python libraries you can install. But Python doesn't do any sort of sanitization, so these libraries, you don't really know what they do. I recommend you don't go installing random libraries from here. Make sure you know what you want before you go through this and install anything. And what we want is a library called BeautifulSoup 4. It's this one here. Notice how there are two at the moment, BeautifulSoup 4-slurp and BeautifulSoup 4. We want to install BeautifulSoup 4. Okay. There are others like BeautifulSoup and a bunch of others. Make sure you pick BeautifulSoup 4. This one here is version 3. You don't want to go for that. You want to go for number 4. Okay. And then install it. Because I've already got it installed, my library is blue, as you can see. So I don't need to install it again. But all you have to do is select it and press install, and it should all be fine. You don't need to do anything else. Once that's done, you should see BeautifulSoup appear here like it has for me, and then that means you are ready to use it. Press apply, and then OK. Once you've done that, we can go ahead and look at our first example of understanding HTML using BeautifulSoup. And also we'll look at exactly what BeautifulSoup does and why we want it. So let's create a new Python file, and you can name it, for example, simple_html. This simple_html is because in this first example, we're going to be looking at some reasonably simple HTML that we can understand with BeautifulSoup. And in the next example, we're going to look at something a bit more complicated. So what does BeautifulSoup do? Well, I'm going to create a variable here, which is my simple HTML, and I've just pasted it in here. And look at how the HTML is structured into its tags. So you can see the HTML tag and the HTML closing tag. And inside this tag, you've got two children, essentially, the head tag and the body tag. The body tag contains a bunch of children, like this H1, this P here, this UL here. The UL contains a bunch of children, which are these LIs. UL, by the way, stands for unordered list. LI stands for list item. We've already looked at H1 for header 1 and P for paragraph. Also notice how one of these paragraphs has a class, subtitle class. What BeautifulSoup can do is it can sort of understand this structure, and it can determine that head is a child of HTML. And it can determine that there are two paragraphs. It can look at the attributes of different elements like the subtitle. And it can also do things like search. So you can tell it, I'm looking for an element that has class subtitle, and it will give you this P tag here. So BeautifulSoup is used for understanding and searching through HTML code. And by the way, just for completeness, HTML is very similar to another language called XML. They look essentially identical with a few minor differences. So BeautifulSoup can also be used for understanding XML, but we are not going to look into that in this video, or indeed in this course. So now that we've got our variable, we have to make sure to include BeautifulSoup into our file, to import it. And imports in Python should generally go at the top of the file. So we're going to do from bs4 import BeautifulSoup. Notice how we're not using BeautifulSoup 4 in any place, we're only using bs4. That's because the BeautifulSoup library has been coded, has been programmed, so that the import happens like this. Other libraries are slightly different. In other libraries, you may do something like from BeautifulSoup 4 import something. But in the case of BeautifulSoup 4, this is incorrect. You must do from bs4 import BeautifulSoup. That's just the way it's coded. It doesn't mean anything specific. And then we're going to give this HTML over to BeautifulSoup for parsing. Parsing is just a programming term for understanding something that has a structure. So I'm going to create a variable called SimpleSoup for our simple HTML. And it's going to be BeautifulSoup. And this is a class, so we're going to instantiate a new object of this class. We're going to create a new object. And the arguments have to be the HTML you want to parse. And as a second argument, you must give it a string of what type of document this is. And this is an HTML document, so we must give it the string html.parser. That way, that tells BeautifulSoup to use the HTML parser in order to understand this document. And then it can understand it. Now, BeautifulSoup is able to go through this document and fully understand it. So we can do things like print SimpleSoup.find h1. Notice how all we're doing is accessing this soup object, the SimpleSoup object, and accessing the find method inside it and giving it what we want to find as an argument. In this case, what we want to find is this heading 1. Because there's only a single heading 1 in the page, this is going to give us that element. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and run this. And you can see how it gives us the tag that we found. h1, this is the title, and closing h1. If you want to find the contents of the tag as opposed to the entire tag, so only this is a title, you can do that by doing SimpleSoup.find h1. This is the tag that you want to find. And after it, you can do .string. And then it gives you, this is the title. Notice how our h1 tag is this SimpleSoup.find h1. And that is an object which has this property here, string, that you can access. No magic's happening here. This is all exactly as we've seen so far in Python. We're just instantiating new objects of type tag, in this case, and then we're accessing a property of that tag. If we wanted to extract this functionality into a function, we could do that, of course. Oh, deleted one too many things there, or rather many too many things. We could say something like find title, and this could give us this content here. Pep8 asks me to put 2 blank lines before a function definition, and then we can of course do find title here. We don't need to print because that's already printing. When we run that, we get this is a title. Okay. Now another thing we can do is, for example, find the different things in a list. Let's do that now. We're going to do def find list items, and this function is going to print out Rolf, Charlie, Jen, and Jose. So it's going to go and find these list items. BeautifulSoup is going to return them as a list of tags, because there are many of them, and then we're going to get the string contents of each. Okay. So what we're going to do is say list items equal SimpleSoup.find all, and this is going to give us all of the tags if there are many. Find is only going to give you 1. So we're going to do find all and then li. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us these list items that we found. Let's print them out just for you to see exactly what's happening, and I'm going to call the function down here as well. And now notice how BeautifulSoup gives us a list of tags, and each tag is the list item and includes inside it Rolf. Now you already know how to extract the string for each of these list items. You can use a list comprehension, for example, to create a new list of the string contents of each tag. You can go and do that right now. I'm sure you managed. All you've got to do is say list contents is e.string, for example, for e in list items. E is the variable we're creating to go over each element in list items, and we're accessing the string property of that and putting that into a new list, which is a list contents. Now, if we print out list contents, you can see that we get a list of the contents: Rolf, Charlie, Jen, and Jose. Okay. Let's now look at something a bit more complicated. Let's look at this paragraph. Let's find the paragraph. Notice how there are 2 paragraphs, so in order to find it, we're going to have to give BeautifulSoup some information other than we're looking for a paragraph. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell BeautifulSoup we're looking for a paragraph that has a class of subtitle. So we're looking for this one, not this one. Let's do it. We're going to define a new function once again. Find subtitle. And what we're going to do is simply find the paragraph, which is going to be simplesoup.find. And now we're going to give it the p tag that we're looking for. And then notice how the second argument is an ATTRS dictionary. This ATTRS dictionary is the attributes of the tag we are looking for. So that is, if we're looking for something that has a class, we're going to give it a dictionary that represents what we're looking for. So in this case, it's going to be class is subtitle. Okay, then we can print paragraph.string, and it should give us, once we run the function as well, of course, our subtitle there. And there you have it. That's how you can find something that has an attribute so that you can drill down on a specific entity as opposed to a more general tag. If you've got a lot of p tags in your code, in your HTML code, you're going to want to be able to narrow it down using some other attribute. In this case, we're using the class. Notice this HTML is fairly simple, so we need to make sure to learn a bit more about BeautifulSoup if we're going to do something more complicated. Talking about more complicated, let's now find the other paragraph. Notice how BeautifulSoup cannot find a paragraph where the class is not subtitle. But what we can do is find all the paragraphs and then remove the one that has this class. So let's do that. What to do is, say, find other paragraph, for example. And then we're going to look at all the paragraphs. You know how to do this. Simplesoup.findAll p. This is going to give us all the paragraphs in the same way that doing this up here gave us all the list items. And then we're going to do other paragraph is p for p in paragraphs if the subtitle not in p.attrs.get class. And we're going to look at what this gives us and fix it in just a moment. And then we're going to print out the other paragraph, 0.string. So what is happening here? This is not quite going to work, by the way, but we'll fix it in just a moment. We're finding all the paragraphs. Then we're going to put the paragraph in its entirety inside this list while we iterate over the paragraphs we found. But we're only going to do that if the subtitle string is not in the paragraph's attributes. And this .get here is a different way of doing this. So p.attrs, the attributes of p, is a dictionary, as we saw when we tried to access it here. BeautifulSoup likes these attributes as a dictionary. So the attributes is a dictionary, and we can access them using the square bracket notation or using the get method. The get method has a benefit, which is that it doesn't raise a key error if it can't find it. Instead, it returns none. So that's a benefit of the get method. However, it's not quite going to work. Let's run it and find out. And as you can see, we get an error here. And the error is reasonable, but maybe not so obvious if you don't know exactly what's going on in this list comprehension. So it says type error. Argument of type none type is not iterable. Okay. So what is happening exactly? We've got evidently something that is none, and it's telling us none is not iterable, which we can probably agree on because it's not a list or a sequence or anything like that. And it's saying you're trying to iterate over it. When are we trying to iterate? We're not iterating over anything. So there are two options. Paragraphs could be none, and then it's telling you, hey, you can't iterate over paragraphs because it's none. So let's print paragraphs out and see if that's the problem. Let's run it again. You can see that we've printed the paragraphs and we found both paragraphs here. So this is not the problem. When we do for p in paragraphs, Python will be okay with that because we're iterating over paragraphs, Paragraphs is a list, so that's fine. The only other instance we're using in is here, p.attrs.get. And I just said that the get method returns none if it can't find this thing in the dictionary, this class. So we've got two paragraphs. One of them has the class, the other one does not. So for this paragraph, p.attrs.get class is going to be none. And then we're checking subtitle not in none. And what that's doing in the background is it's going over every element and comparing subtitle against each element and saying whether it exists or not. So here we're also doing iteration. Only it's a bit more obfuscated by the Python syntax. But it's doing iteration and it's saying, hey, p.attrs.get of class is giving you none, and then you're checking whether something is in it, but you can't check whether something is in none because that doesn't make any sense. Fortunately, the get method allows us to do something which is pretty useful. Instead of returning none, which is the default, which is essentially this, we can return something else if we cannot find the thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to return an empty list if we couldn't find the class in this dictionary. That way we're going to check whether subtitle is not in an empty list instead of none. Let's run this again. Now you can see how we found it. Okay, so it's important that you understand exactly what's going on in your code so you can debug your errors. But if you don't, go and debug. We know how to debug now. Put some print statements, that's also a good way, or indeed use the logging module that we've learned about in order to check it. Now we've looked at some simple HTML parsing in this video. We have looked at individual items like h1, we've looked at multiple items like the list. We've looked at a specific item using the attributes, finding with this dictionary of attributes, and we've also looked at finding all the elements and then removing some by using this p.attrs. Okay, in the next video we're going to look at something a bit more complex, so stay with me and I'll see you there.
I promise you, if you put your mind to it and you work hard and you never give up and you do not listen to the rejection, you can achieve anything that life throws your way.
Hi and welcome back. In this video we're looking at something a bit more complicated, understanding some slightly more complex HTML. Let's create a new file in our project, which I'm going to call middle HTML. By the way, the files in the project, which are available at the start of this section, also contain this exact code and you can have a look at them. The files may be named slightly differently and that should be fine, I hope. Once again, we're going to do the same from BS4 import BeautifulSoup, and then I'm going to paste in some HTML. In this case, our HTML is going to represent an item that is being on sale in an online website. So let's say we've managed to extract the content from the website. We're going to look at how to do that. And we've ended up with this HTML here. And with this HTML, we can find out the price of the item, the star rating of the item, and so forth. Let me show you exactly what this looks like on the website, then it'll make a bit more sense. What we've got here is a demo website for web scraping purposes. And let's say we've managed to extract some HTML content from it. The content that I've extracted and put in the file is the content that represents this object exactly, this bit of HTML here. It contains an image, a rating, a title, which seems to be partly missing, and the price, and then whether it's in stock or not, and finally a button to add it to the basket. So this HTML here is what we've copied into our file. And again, we're going to learn how to get the HTML from the site very soon. So let's go back into PyCharm and look at the HTML. This is what we've got. We've got a list item here. That's because each element is actually in a list in the website. So an element is a list item of a big list that is formatted and structured in a bit of a different way than you'd normally see lists. Then it's got an article inside it. You can see that the article spans essentially the entire document, and that is everything that we're interested in. We've got a div, which has a class image container, and a div in HTML is normally just something used to structure your content. So think of it as a rectangle, and you can put things inside it. And in here, what they've put is a link, and that's the A, which is used for linking. href is the URL or the address of the page that the link goes to. And inside the link, notice how the link starts here and ends here in this closing tag. You've got a image. This is an image tag, and this is the source of the image. That is some JPEG file. It's got some alt property, and it's got a class property. The alt property is the alternate text to show if the image cannot load for some reason. So that is the title of the book, actually, A Light in the Attic. Outside the div, we have a p tag, a paragraph tag, which is used for the star rating. This is a bit of a bizarre way of doing a star rating, but you can see that there is a class star rating and another class which is separated by a space in HTML called 3 with a capital T. So this book has 3 stars, but you can see inside it there are 5 I tags which are used for icons. So you can see that we must look at 3, this class here, and not at the number of I tags, because the I tags are always 5. So we don't want to look at that, we want to look at this 3. Then outside the P you have an H3, which is the title of the book, and you can see that the contents of the H3 are a light in the ... Presumably the book name is too long and it couldn't be displayed fully on the website. However, the H3 contains inside it a link to the book page, presumably, and also has a title property in it, a title attribute that is also the title of the book. Then you've got a div, which is the product price, and inside it you've got a p tag, which contains the class price color, and that contains the price of the book with a pound symbol in front of it. Also inside the div you have this other p tag called with class in stock and another class called availability. Presumably this class in stock will only be present in the document when the thing is in stock, and if it's out of stock it'll say something else, possibly. We don't know that. Inside that p tag you've got an I class, which is for an icon, an I tag, that's for an icon, and that has a class icon-OK. Then you've got the text in stock. Notice how this is weirdly formatted. And finally, you've got a form that has a button in it. Don't have to worry too much about that. We're not going to be looking into this. Then you close the div that you started up here. Finally, you close the article. You close the list item, which is for the entire thing. And then you close your HTML. So we sort of understand this code. Maybe it's not the clearest thing in the world, but we are going to try to extract some data from it. So let's do just that. The first thing is, of course, to create our soup. So we're going to do BeautifulSoup of item HTML and the HTML.parser. Then we're going to start by locating the item name. Okay, so the item name, the title of the book, is, for example, in this A. You remember we've got an image there that has an alt property, which is the title of the book. Or more normally, we can get it off the actual title. This is a heading 3, as you know, and inside it there's an A, and the A has a property title, and that's the title of the book. We cannot get the content out of the string property because that has a 3 dots and it's missing part of the title. So we must get it through here. Okay, let's do that. Let's create a function which is going to be find item name. And I'm going to introduce to you a new way of locating things, which I think is substantially easier than the default way. So we're going to identify from the start of our document what path of children will give us our element, our A element. So as you can see, our title tag, our title property here is in this A tag. The A tag is in the H3 tag. The H3 tag is in the article tag. The article tag is in the LI tag, which is in the body tag, which is in the HTML tag. So we're going to look at any of these parents. We can start at anywhere. We can start in the li, we can start at the article, we can start at the h3, and we're going to say article is the first one, for example. Then comes h3, then comes a. And you can see that because this div here, for example, is in the same level as this p tag. The indentation is not very good, but you can see that the div tag opens here and it closes here, which means the p tag is not inside it. And the p tag closes here, which means the h3 tag is not inside it. So these are all on the same level, which means they're all children of the article. And the a is the children of an h3. So what we've got essentially in our locator is we've got an article, then separated by a space we have a h3, and then we have an a. And this sort of hierarchy allows BeautifulSoup to find elements very easily. Okay? If you wanted to narrow down into a specific article, for example, if you've had many articles, notice how this article has a class of product_pod. So you can actually say article.product pod. And what this means now is you're looking for the article that has class product pod, and inside it you're looking for an h3, and inside it you're looking for an a. And this, once you do, for example, item name is soup.select 1 locator, is going to give you whatever it is that this results in. This thing here is known as a CSS locator, and it's really powerful. It allows us to essentially do this sort of thing. And it's the way that CSS, the CSS language, also locates things. We're not going to look into CSS in this course, or at least not yet, but that's what it's called, essentially. In its simplest terms, we can get the parent, narrow it down by a class if we want, and then go down to a child, and then another child, and so forth, until we have a hierarchy that is not repeated throughout the site. So if you only have one article with a product pod, one h3, and one a, then that's going to give you this hierarchy here that you can search for. Now that you've got we're not going to call it item name, we're going to call it item link. Now you've got the item link, we can say item name is item link .attrs title. Again, this accesses the attributes of the link. Our link is here. And we're going to access the title property or attribute of that link. And then we can print the item name out. Let's run the function, and remember to run your middle HTML file. And you can see that we get a light in the attic printed out. Now, using these locators, you can essentially locate anything. So here's a small challenge for you. Using a locator, you're going to actually use the same one. Find out the link to this items page. So what you're looking for is this href here. I'm sure you can do it. I hope you managed. All that we have to do is essentially access the same locator, but instead of the title, access another attribute, which is the href attribute. So we're going to copy, paste it in here, and we're going to call it find item link. And then we're going to access the href attribute here. Again, it's the same element, article with product pod class, the h3 tag, which is a child, and the a tag, which is a child of that. And then we're going to select that. And finally, we're going to access the attributes of that. And we're going to print it out. But of course, now that we have this item link, that's a pretty good name for our link. We're going to just do this. So access the item, the tag, and then access the href property of that. And then we can print that out. Let's delete this. And run again. And now you can see that we get the title, and then we get the link here as well. This is a relative link, so it doesn't give you the entire domain name and the website and everything. But that's okay. I mean, we'll learn how to deal with that later on. Okay. Using this locator, now we can find other things. So we can find, for example, the item price and the item rating. It's not so easy to do because you're going to have to do some other calculations. For example, if you wanted to find the item's price, which is here, you're going to look at article. Then you're going to potentially look at a P that has price color class. And then you're going to look at its contents, the string contents of it. But this is not a number, it is a string. So you may want to strip out the pound sign and use a regular expression to extract this group. I think this would be a great exercise for us to review what we've learned in the last section and give it a go. Try to extract 51.77 as a float using BeautifulSoup and the regular expressions. Give that a go. Pause the video and go for it. I hope you managed. It's a bit of a more complicated way to go about things. But what we're going to do is first of all locate this. First of all, get the string out with BeautifulSoup. So I'm going to create a new function. Find item price. And then I'm going to define my locator, which is going to be article.productPod. And inside it, we've got p.priceColor. So here we're accessing the article that has this class and the p that has this class. And that's going to give us a pretty good understanding, or it's going to give BeautifulSoup a good understanding of how to get there. Then we're going to access the item price, which is going to be soup.selectOne locator.string. All that's happening here is we're finding that tag and we're accessing the string content of it. So this is going to give us £, 51.77 or however much it was. Yeah, 51.77. So this is giving us that. Now we have this, we have to use a regular expression in order to extract it. So going to the top of the file, I'm going to import the RE module, import RE. Notice how I am doing this import RE at the top of the file, and from blah 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 import something else directly underneath it. This is Python sort of convention to do these type of imports at the top, this type of imports just directly below them. Now that we've got the RE module, we can define our pattern, the regular expression we're looking for. And this is going to be, first of all, the pound symbol, 51.77. This is going to match. And we want to extract 51.77 as a number. So we're going to put it inside these brackets so that we can extract it using the group. Then, of course, we're not interested in this 51.77 only, but if the price were to change, we'd want to get the changed price. So instead of putting 51.77 in here, we're going to have to use something that will allow us to get a range of numbers. And the way we're going to do that is by doing 0 to 9 inside the square brackets. This is a range of numbers from 0 to 9. Then we're going to do plus. So that's going to give us one or more of these numbers. And then we're going to make sure to put a backslash in front of the dot so that it matches the dot and not anything, which is what it means in regular expressions. And for the 77, we're going to do the same, 0 to 9 plus. Then we're going to search and get our groups. So our groups, or our matcha, is going to be re.search, pattern, and item price. And again, this is going to give us two groups. Group 0, which is going to be the entire thing that matches. And then matcha.group 1, which is going to be the first group that is between the brackets. So that's going to be 51.77 without the pound symbol. Okay, this is going to be 51.77. This is going to be 51.77 without the symbol. So we can indeed turn it into a float. Okay, we're printing out the float of this matcha. And so let's run that and see what happens. And as you can see, we get 51.77 with the pound sign and 51.77 without the pound sign. Okay. Let's say we wanted to print it out, but at a 20% discount, we could multiply by 0.8, and this should work because it's a number now, it's not a string. And as you can see, it works. We get 41.416. So that's pretty awesome. We have now learned how to extract a number using BeautifulSoup and regular expressions from a website. So for example, the things we can do now, once we learn, of course, how to interact with the website, which we will do shortly in this section, you can, for example, track item prices online. For example, let's say you play badminton and you want to track the price of badminton rackets over time in order to find out when you should buy one. You could do this with a simple Python app that essentially downloads the site and looks through it using something like this. Finally, let's find out the item's rating. The rating is going to be a bit more complicated because we have to look at exactly one attribute, which is this 3 here. But of course, this is in a p tag, and there are many p tags around. So let's find this out. Let's go down here. We're going to do def find item rating. The locator is going to be article.productPod, and inside it, p.starRating. That's because the paragraph we're looking for is the one that has this class, star-rating. In CSS, classes are always separated by spaces. So what this p tag has is 2 classes, star rating and 3. So we're looking for the paragraph that has the star rating class, and it also has other classes, but we're not limited to only this one. So this locator will find that paragraph. It has the p.starRating, and if we wanted to also find it with the 3 class, we could do this. But we don't want to find it with 2 classes, just in case the rating changes. So we're going to stick it with this only. Okay. The star rating element, the tag or the star rating tag, is going to be soup.find select one here locator. So this gives us the tag. Okay. Now we can get the class tags out of it. So the classes are star rating tag .attrs class. And this is now when BeautifulSoup extractors is going to be 2 classes. These 2. This is what it's going to give us. So we need to find out what this is. But remember, it could be the first one. It doesn't necessarily have to be the second class. So this list could be like this. We cannot just select the second element. That would be too easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to recreate this classes list, but without this star rating. I'm sure you can do that using either a list comprehension or the filter function. Give it a go. I'm sure you managed. There are 2 ways that we could do this. We could say rating classes is R for R in classes if R is not equal to star rating. This would be one way, or we could do rating classes equals filter of lambda x for x is not star rating in classes. Okay, either of these would be perfectly suitable. The code that you'll see online has this, so we're going to leave the list comprehension in the video. If you want to look out at the other way of doing things, check out the video which is linked at the start of the lecture and also at the start of this section and also in the lecture. Now this list here should contain a single element, this 3. So we can just say print rating classes 0. We're assuming that the paragraph is not going to have any other tags. Say, for example, a hello class. Would be weird, but it can happen. And this method, if that's the case, is not ideal for that. But through looking at a few of the items on the website, it seems that there are only ever 2 classes, star rating and the rating. And so that could be 4 or 5 or 3 and so on. Finally, let's call this one find item rating and run this. And there you have it down here. We've got the number of stars in this book. So we could use this now to search the books. We could, for example, download the entire page and find which books have 5 stars and are under £20. And that would be something that we could do. But before we do that, of course, we have to learn to extract the content from the site by downloading the website. So we're going to do that very soon. But first, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how to improve on this structure. You're not always going to, or you're not going to want to have, these top level functions for each thing you're finding. You're not going to want your functions to be printing things out necessarily. So we're going to make things a bit better. we're going to start separating things into classes and things like that, just so you have a better idea of how I'd recommend that you go about parsing the HTML and sort of dealing with it nicely in your programs. So with that said, I'll see you on the next video.
Jay, my relationship's falling apart. I get asked that all the time. So the answer to that is much harder, but I always start with self-actualization, that the problem is we have a list for the one that we want, and we don't have a list for what we need to become. And I don't mean become to attract, I mean become to just be, to just get to understand yourself. You don't know what you need in your life until you figure out who you are. And so I find too many people rush into relationships without really recognizing and being fully aware of what they need from a relationship. So it all comes back to how aware are you, how much understanding do you have of yourself and what you need and what you want.
Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're talking about how to structure your program a bit better to deal with HTML parsing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select everything in my file, in my middle HTML file, and go and create a new file that I'm going to call class HTML parsing, for example. And I'm going to paste it all in. And what I want to show you is a way that you can structure this so that instead of just single functions, you have something a bit more self-contained, a class. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of this, except the HTML, all of this into a class that I'm going to be calling parsed item, for example. And this is going to be a class to take in an HTML page or part of it and find properties of an item in it. Okay? So it's going to take in a page or potentially a section of a page, and it's going to do self.soup equal BeautifulSoup of page and HTML.parser. Okay? The good thing about this is that now, let's say you have a page that has many of these articles. You could create a parsed item for each of those articles. And the only thing you'd have to do is sort of get the article tag and pass it into here. And then this item would be something that represents that section of the page. But of course, these functions all have to be in there, right? They all have to take in self, and self. And you don't need two spaces anymore. Pep8 doesn't like that inside a class. Then instead of soup, you're going to do self.soup. And what's happening now is that for this soup that you've created when you passed in this portion of the page to this class, you're going to be able to find the name and the link and so forth for each item. So if you had many articles, you could just give each one to this class, and this class would find inside the article the item name or the item link and so forth. Now, in order to make them actually find things, instead of printing things out, we're going to return. So instead of print, we're going to return. And you're going to see how easy it becomes to deal with all this stuff. I'm going to delete this print matcher group there. And then we're going to return here as well. You're going to see how easy it is to deal with this stuff now. Because all you have to do in order to get something out of this item is to say parsed item HTML. This can be your item, and then say something like print item.find item rating. Then run the file, and you get 3 out. So what's the benefit of this? Well, you've done encapsulation now, essentially. You've encapsulated all the logic, you've stored all the logic away inside this class, and now you can reuse the class for each of the articles you've got on your site. You don't have to sort of wonder about trying to get any drilling down into specific articles using more complex locators. What you could do is, if you have a large site with many articles, say something like soup.find all article, and then for each parsed item P for P in that. Something along these lines. We're going to look at exactly how it would go, but I just want you to see that then you would end up with a list of these parsed items, and each item would be able to find its own rating or price and so forth. If you want to make it even better, you can just remove this find item, because the class is already called item. You don't need find item things. All you need to do is now the item's rating, the item's price, the item's link, and the item's name, and you have yourself essentially something that could come from HTML, or it could be a class that maybe comes from a JSON or something like that. It's a nice API for the data. If you want to make it even better, you can add a @property tag in front of each. And this is now very simple. Item.name. And that's where you have at the end, a light in the attic. Now, when you're interacting with an item, you don't know if this is coming from a database, or if it's coming from a CSV file, or if it's coming indeed from some HTML that you're parsing. You don't know, and you shouldn't have to care when you're doing that. So this is a great way of making your items much easier to work with when you're writing something in a different part of the program. So I just wanted to quickly tell you about this method of structuring your parsing, so it's a bit easier to work with. So that's it for this video. In the next one, we're going to look at another improvement you can make, which is much shorter, and then we'll be moving on. I'll see you there.
You don't trust that someone's never going to betray you. You just trust that you'll be able to handle it if they do, that you'll be able to walk away. That's a massive key to it. Stop worrying about whether you can trust someone else. Maybe you can't. We don't know that. Only time will tell if you can trust somebody else. That is a pointless waste of your energy to worry about. Worry only about yourself.
Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to look at separating locators into classes. So what we're going to do is not hard code these locators into the class parsed item. The parsed item is the item that represents the data that is in the HTML. It shouldn't represent also how to get that data. So how to get that data should be in a different place. So we're going to create a new class, which I'm going to call parsed item locators. And I'm going to paste in a docstring here that I have from my notes, just so it's a bit easier for you. Locators for an item in the HTML page. This allows us to easily see what our code will be looking at, as well as change it quickly if we notice it is now different. So this may not make much sense until I start writing here. Name locator is going to be article.product pod h3a. Okay, that's the locator we use down here for the name. What if this changes, the website changes, and when we get the HTML back, it's slightly different? The parsed item shouldn't care, because the parsed item represents the item itself and not how to get the data from it. So this is a small but important distinction, and it's all about how you think of your program, how your program's different parts interact with one another. Separating the how and the what is going to make your programs much simpler, and also simpler to work with. So instead of putting this string here, we're going to do parse item locators dot name locator. These would potentially and probably be in different files altogether. In this case, I'm leaving them in one file just for simplicity, but they would likely be in two different files, one for the locators and one for the item. The good thing is that as long as the website doesn't change massively, for example, if they just remove this class and maybe add a different class or something like that, you don't have to go and look at the item and read through all this code. No, all you have to do is go to the site, find out the new HTML locator, and change it. So it's very straightforward. So we're going to do that for the others, and once again, I'm going to copy them just to save you some time. I think you're getting much better at programming by this stage of the course, so I think I'm allowed to now copy some code from my notes and save you some time. So there we have our link, price, and rating locator, and then we're just going to replace them down here. So this is the parse item locators dot link locator, parse item locators dot price locator, and also the parse item locators dot rating locator. Now, there are a couple of things in these methods here, like this pattern or this class that we're filtering out, that could possibly be in another place, so that the item doesn't really care at all of where it's coming from. But sometimes that's just not feasible, and other times it's just too complicated in order to be worth the effort. So by all means, try to do that if you want, but I would leave it like this, and I think this is a great way of separating out where the item is on the page from how you're going to extract the data and sort of what the item represents. So hopefully this makes a bit of sense. This way of separating concerns is something that we do all the time, and this is how we structure our tests at work professionally. And so it's definitely a great way to go about it, and it's going to simplify your code greatly. I hope this makes sense, and I'll see you on the next video where we're going to start looking at retrieving the page using another library. I'll see you there.
Try if you feel overwhelmed. Try your best to ask for help, even when you think there's no one but yourself. You'd be surprised to know how many people see merit in crying and healing through it. For beverages are meant to be bottled up, not human feelings.
Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're talking about how to see the HTML using your browser so that you'll know how to scrape it and how to parse it and how to understand it. What I've got here is this website, books.toscrape.com, which is a website that was specifically designed for practicing scraping. Scraping is the act of loading a page using Python or another programming language and extracting data from it. So this page was designed for scraping, which means you're free to use it for scraping, practice it, give it a go, and see what happens. Now, before you even think of downloading the page using Python, you have to understand what's going on in a browser, because what's going on in Python is very similar to what goes on in the browser. So whenever your browser loads a page, such as if you go to books.toscrape.com, it's actually downloading the page. It's asking the place where the page is hosted, where the page lives, and it's asking to download the data in it. It doesn't store the page in your downloads or anything like that, but the page is downloaded so the browser can use it. And we can also get Python to download a page, and that gives Python the ability to look at the code and look at the HTML, look at the page content to see what's there. We can load an HTML page with Python, and that will give us the HTML as a string. And then we can parse it and we can extract data from it. The act of doing all of that, from downloading the page to extracting data, is called scraping. So when you load the page using your browser, I recommend using Google Chrome for this, by the way. If you don't have Google Chrome, I advise using Chrome. It's the best browser for web development generally. You can select or find what you want to extract. So imagine you wanted to use Python to get the price. Then what you would do is you would right-click and you would press Inspect. What you then get is this side window. It could be at the bottom or it could be in an entirely separate window. But you get something that looks a lot like this. And what you've got here on the left is, I'm going to just make it a bit bigger for you guys to see. What you've got here on the left, remember, this is the right, this is the left, and here you've got some extra things at the bottom. What you've got here is the HTML of the page. This is the entirety of the page content. As you can see, it starts up here with HTML. And then you've got the head tag, you've got the body tag that has the main set of content. You've got a header, which is an HTML tag for sort of the top of the page. And then you've got a lot of different nested components. You've got a div, which is just a block of content. that div has another block of content, and that has some sort of list. UL stands for unordered list, and that's this up here, this breadcrumbs. That's the page you're currently at. You've then got another div, and inside it you've got sort of a bunch of other things. You can use Google Chrome here to very easily see what each element is. For example, this aside here is the sort of left-hand bit that has the navigation, different types of books you can look at, and then you've got this one here that is the rest of the page. So if you could only see this, and you wanted to get the price, you would sort of hover over here and find out this blue section. This is what you're interested in is inside this section. Then you would sort of go in and you'd find this div. You then see this UL, but what you're interested in is not in here. So you'd look at this div. The price is inside this div because it's inside the blue area. Then you'd look at this aside. The blue thing doesn't include the price, so it's probably not inside here. Then you'd find this div, and this div does contain the price, so then you could go into it by opening it up and sort of navigate that way until you find the section that you're interested in. So you'd find this section, then you'd find this div, then that, then this list item, this article, and then you've got there the price eventually, and then you can find it. So what we found here is essentially the hierarchy of elements that end up containing the thing that we're interested in. So as you can see, we've got the P that contains the price, and that's inside a div, which is inside an article, and so forth. So this is going to be really important for you to be able to understand the HTML when you download it. The interesting thing is also that you can see there are a lot of similar elements, and that's one for each book in the page. You can see that as I hover over these, different books get selected. And each of these elements is one book. So if you wanted to load the price of all elements on the site, once you've managed to download the HTML, which we will look at soon, all you have to do is find each li element with these classes here, and that's going to give you all the books. Well, it will give you a tag object in BeautifulSoup for each of the books. Then, for each of the books, you could pass it to the class that we created and parse the price out and the name and so forth. So you could then start working with these books in Python as opposed to in HTML. Okay. Now, when you want to get the data out and use it from within Python, it's not enough to load it in your browser. Of course, you have to get Python to do it. And in order to do that, we're going to install another library called requests that is used to essentially request some data from a page and download it so that you can then use it or look at it or print it out or anything you want. So that library will be used to get the page contents, this HTML, and then we will use BeautifulSoup to understand that and extract the data. Let's look at that in the very next video. So I'll see you there.
I blame no one. I look in the mirror. On the other side of it, what an opportunity we have, because tomorrow's the first day of the rest of our lives. So what an opportunity we have to practice.
Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to look at using the requests library to download page content so that we can then parse it with BeautifulSoup. The first thing to do is, once again, we're going to install a library. Let's go over to our preferences, which, remember, on a Mac is under PyCharm Community Edition and Preferences. On Windows, I believe it's under File, and it should be down there somewhere. Let's go to your preferences, and once again, find the project section here, and then go into the project interpreter, press the plus icon down here, and find the requests library. You can see that I've already got it installed, but if you don't have it installed yet, just press install. Okay, I've got it here, so I'm going to press install actually to just update it. Update it to the latest version, and that should be fine. Okay, now when we've got it installed, we can use the requests library from within our Python code. So let's create a new Python file that I'm going to call scraping books.py. And here we're going to do import requests. Okay. We're also going to do from BS4 import BeautifulSoup. Now, if you want to find out the page contents and download the pages in Python, all you'll ever have to do is do something like this. Page equals requests.get, and then as a string, you must put the page that you want to load. So that's, for example, http://www.example.com, and then print page.content. So example.com is a sample site that you can also use just to test things out. And what's happening here is we're asking the requests module, and we're calling the get function within that module. Okay, the get function does some HTTP transactions in the background, some HTTP requests. It's a bit more technical than we're going to go into in this course, but essentially it goes and asks the server that is where the website is stored for the page, and then the server can decide to respond with the page content, or it can decide to respond with something else. The server can basically decide what to do when this happens, when we ask it, and hopefully it will respond with the page content. That's what normally happens. Once we've got that, we receive the page content and also a couple more small bits of information, like a status code which tells us whether there was an error or not, and a few more things. The other things are not terribly important. The content is what we're most interested in. So the requests module converts that response that comes from the server that's in a sort of complex format, converts it into an object in Python that we can then access the content property of. So let's run this file and see what happens. As you can see, we get a string here. It's a pretty long string because the contents get downloaded all into a single line. But you can see that there's a p tag in here. This domain is established to be used for the illustrative examples in documents. So this is what we're doing. So this is what the example.com website looks like. It's got a h1 tag, a p tag, and some more information, which is a link. And if you right-click it and inspect it, which is what I've done here, you see that you get the body, which is the main sort of section in HTML. Then there's a div, which is just a block of content. And inside that div, we've got three main tags: the h1 tag, the p tag, which contains the paragraph, and another p tag, which contains an a tag, which is a link. And that has an attribute href, which is the link that it goes to, and the text inside it is more information. So let's go back to PyCharm, and we're going to try to parse through this HTML code. But essentially, it'll respond with something like this: the HTML of the page. So if we wanted, we could parse it with BeautifulSoup as well. We could do something like soup equal BeautifulSoup of the page content, and of course we must give it the HTML parser, and then we can print, for example, soup, print soup.find. There's an h1 on the page, I know this because I've looked at the page before, string, and then we could print this out, and you can see that we get example domain out. All we did here is nothing new. We got the page content. This is new. Then the other things are not new. We created a BeautifulSoup object. We passed in the page content. That's the HTML content of the page. Given it the HTML parser, because that's what it's going to use to parse through the content and try to understand it. And finally, we found a h1 and we've printed as a string. Okay. The new thing here is this get. And all we're doing, you can think of it as getting the page content. What's happening in the background is a bit more technical, as I mentioned earlier. Nothing you should be worrying about. Also, you can of course do everything we did in the last few videos. You can do soup.select1, and then you can give it a different type of locator, like this one, href. And here what we're accessing is the a tag, which is within a p tag, and we're accessing the href attribute of that. So this is going to be a link. We can run this again, oh, sorry, this should be square brackets. My bad. And we get now this link here. So this is an example of how you may go about downloading a page and accessing some properties and some tags in it. We're going to look at another example in the coming videos with some more interesting things going on. We're going to look at that bookstore and that we saw earlier on, and we're going to start sort of understanding multiple pieces of data at the same time. So with that said, I'll see you on the next video.
Let them talk shit, because at the end of the day, the haters, the ones who talk shit, first of all, their view is always the same. They're way behind talking shit to you, who's leading the pack, or they're way below talking shit up to you, again, who's leading the pack. So let them all talk shit, let them all make their noise, because at the end of the day, you are the only one who has the guts. We have the guts to go to work and show up every single day, day in and day out, putting in the work. Hardest workers in the room is not just some cool saying that we say or a cool hashtag. It's a lifestyle, and it comes from in here. It's how we eat. Let's go and block out that noise. Achieve that greatness.
Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're looking at scraping this quotes page that you see here, and we're going to do that before moving on to the books, just because this one's a little bit simpler. And what I'm going to teach you over the next few videos is how to structure your scraping applications so that you can do anything you want with them. In this section, we're going to build two projects, the quotes page scraper and then the books page scraper, which is going to be actually very similar, at least in structure. Let's start by analyzing this quotes page. The URL, by the way, is quotes.toscrape.com, so feel free to have a look yourself as well if you want to sort of play around with it. What we've got is, as you can see, a few different elements in the screen. We've got some sort of title up here. We've got a login page down here on the top right. We've got top 10 tags, so these things are presumably clickable. So these are links. Then you've got individual quotes in these rectangles here, these sort of cards. Whenever you see something that looks structured like this, you know it's going to be an easy scrape. And this page is designed for scraping, so of course it's going to be sort of maybe slightly simpler than other pages you may see out in the wild. But what we're going to learn in this section is really going to help us scrape any page, not just these simpler pages. So what we've got here are a number of different cards, and each card contains a quote, as well as the author and a bunch of tags here that we can scrape. What we're going to do is we're going to create a program that will give us the quote contents and also the author. That's it, pretty simple program, but again, what you learn will mean that you will be able to extend that program beyond that by any amount. So let's start by inspecting the page source just to know what it looks like. And as you can see here on the right, we have ourselves the body of the HTML that contains all of the content. Inside there, we've got a div, which has a class container that contains all of the content as well. And then we have a row, which is a header box. And beside it, we have another row, which is the rest of the content. Inside that row, we have a number of, well, two columns. One that is call MD8 and the other one that is call MD4. And also has another class called tags-box. So this is the tags, this is the quotes, and in the quotes we have a number of divs, each div with a class quote that has one of the quotes. So we know that each of these divs is going to be exactly identical to all the others, except in the content. But inside one div we have a span, which has a class text, and that contains the quote. Another span, which contains by, and also a small tag, which contains the author, and also a link, which contains the about page of that author. And then it's got another div, which contains the tags, and there's a few things in here, and amongst them is an A tag that has a class tag. So inside that tag, we have change, deep thoughts, thinking, world, and so forth. If you were to look at any other of these quotes, you'll see that it's essentially the same. A span with class text that contains the quote, another span that contains by, and a small tag which contains the author, and then another div here with the tags, and so forth. So we know that as long as we manage to get these divs, and for each div get this data, we'll be able to extract all of the data that we need from the page. So we're going to do that in the very next video. We're going to structure our new application in order to be able to understand this page. I'll see you in the very next video.
A bull and a pheasant were grazing upon the field. The pheasant looked up at the tree very nostalgically and said, "Oh, alas, there was a time I could fly to the topmost branch of the tree." The bull very nonchalantly said, "That's no issue. Just eat a little bit of my dung every day. You will get to the topmost branch of the tree within a fortnight." The pheasant said, "Oh, come on, what kind of rubbish is that?" The bull said, "Really, try it and see, the whole humanity's on it." So the pheasant started pecking at the dung, and lo, on the first day itself he reached the first branch of the tree. Within a fortnight he did hit the topmost branch of the tree. He went and sat there in the topmost branch of the tree, just beginning to enjoy the scenery. The old farmer who was rocking on the rocking chair saw a fat old pheasant sitting on top of the tree. He pulled out his shotgun and shot the bird out of the tree. The moral of the story is, many times even bullshit can get you to the top, but it never lets you stay there.
Nothing can stop me, I'm all the way up. All the way up.
Hi and welcome back. In this video we're going to be setting up our project to scrape quotes. What I've done is I've created a new project called Scraping Quotes, the code to which is linked in the lecture. And so feel free to have a wee look at it if you want. But I'd recommend you go through the few videos here just before going into the code, because the way we're going to structure the app may be a bit different from, or more complicated than other things we've done before. We're going to create a new Python file, which is going to be app. This is going to be the entry point of our application. We're going to be running this file. We're also going to create a couple of packages. We're going to create a pages package. We're going to create a new package also on the top called locators. So notice how our scraping quotes project contains locators, pages, and app. And finally, we're also going to create a final package called parsers. So now it contains 3 different packages: locators, pages, parsers, and app. The purpose of these is to separate the different parts of our program. The locators is going to contain, you guessed it, the locators of where things are in the HTML, how we can find things. The pages is going to contain the code to use those locators to find particular things in a page. And finally, the parsers are very similar to pages, but for specific things that we want to work with. Okay. Then we're going to create a few files. For the locators, we're going to create 2 files. Quote locators, and also a quotes page locators. The quote locators are those locators used when we want to extract information from within a single quote. Quotes page locators are the locators for when we want to extract quotes from a page. In the pages, we're going to create a quotes page. This is going to contain some code related to getting data out of the quotes page, which is the main page that we saw earlier in the previous video. And finally, the parsers is going to contain one called quote, and this is going to get some tag and is going to be able to find quote data within that tag. Okay, let's move on to the next video, and we're going to start writing some of these locators by comparing and finding things using the browser. I'll see you in the next video.
You can study for a half hour. It doesn't take a half-hour break to recharge your batteries. For most people, about 5 minutes. And this is where you go away, do something fun for 5 minutes. Call a friend, talk to a child, talk to a parent, a roommate. Enjoy some music. Do something you enjoy and actually say, this is my treat for having studied for 30 minutes effectively. Go back and here's what happens. your efficiency is nearly 100%. Study a half hour, take a break. Study a half hour, study a half hour. Now, had she done that over a course of 6 hours, she would have got about 5.5 hours of serious studying and about a half hour of total break time.
Hi and welcome back. In this video we're going to be creating our locator files by getting data out of the HTML here using Chrome. So we said earlier we've got two locator files in our project, the quote locators and the quotes page locators. The quotes page is this page you see here, and the HTML is down here on the right. So let's center on the HTML and look at what the quote page has to offer. We have a bunch of quotes in divs, and as you can see they are each down here. So the page is essentially something that contains these quotes, and it also contains a few other things like the tags and a title and so forth. For our project, the quotes page is going to allow us to retrieve these divs here, these quotes. Now, then the quote locators are going to be the locators that are within a single quote. So our quotes page has only to worry about finding this div and this div and this div and so forth, and then we're going to give that entire element to our quote locators, and they're going to be able to find this span, this other author, and also the tags. So let's go over into PyCharm and start by creating the quotes page locators. Okay. So go over to quotes page locators, and we're going to create a class here called quotes page locators. And all this is going to contain is a single constant, and a constant in Python, I'm not sure if we've mentioned this before, is normally a variable that's all in uppercase. And this is going to contain div.quote. And if we go back to Chrome, we can see that div.quote is going to give us this div here with this class quote. But if we find many of them, it's going to give us this one, this one, this one, this one. It's going to give us all of these in this page. So when we use that locator, we'll be able to find all of these divs. For each div, we're going to use the locators in here. So if we now go to the quote locators, we're going to create some quote locators. And these are going to be one for each thing that we want to extract from a quote. So that's an author, a content or quote, and also a tags locator. Okay, let's fill these in, the author, content, and tags. So for the author, we're going to look for this small class author, this tag here. So if we go back to PyCharm, in the author, we can put small.author. That's going to look again for the small tag that has class author. For the content, we are looking for span with a class of text. And finally, for the tags, we are looking for a div that has class tags, this one here, but we are actually looking for each of these A tags so that we can extract the different tags that are in there. So we're going to look for div.tags, and inside it a.tag, and we're going to find multiple of them. So that's going to be div.tags, and in it a.tag. Okay? These are our locators, so given one of these quotes, with this locator we'll be able to find the author. So once again, going back to the HTML, given one of these quotes, one of these divs specifically, these locators are unique enough that we'll be able to find the quote contents using span.text, the author using small.author, and the tags using div.tags, a.tag. Now, if we were given this entire page, we would not know whether to extract the quote contents from the first quote, or from the second quote, or from the third quote, and so forth. So what we're going to do is we are going to give our parser, what's going to use those locators, only one of these divs. And then with that one, it's going to be able to find the correct element, and we're going to treat them independently. I know this doesn't make much sense just yet, but believe me, as we progress through this app, it's going to make more and more sense. For now, just trust me that this is the way to go forward. And let's go over to the next video, where we're going to look at creating our pages. I'll see you there.
Clarity is power. The more clear you are about exactly what it is you want, the more your brain knows how to get there. Your brain is a servo mechanism. It's like a bomb. Those bombs, those missiles, they have a servo mechanism. So if the target moves, it knows what the target is, it follows it. Your brain, when you condition it, knows exactly what to go for, and it'll find a way to get there. When you decide what's most important to you, your brain goes after it. So if we're going to be extraordinary in our results, we've got to be in an extraordinary state. We've got to know what we want, and we got to go use it.
Hi and welcome back. In the last video, I said we're going to look at the pages, but actually I think it makes more sense to look at the quote parser first. So what I've done is I've opened here the quote parser, and what we're going to do is first of all import our quote locators, and then we're going to create a class quote parser, and this class is going to be used to, given one of the specific quote divs, find out the data about the quote. Quote content, author, and tags. Now, this is going to make use of a new thing in BeautifulSoup that we've not looked at before, but nonetheless, that's the purpose of these projects, to introduce things. And that is that well, we're going to receive here in the init method a parent, and then we're going to say self.parent equal parent. Just to explain why I'm calling this parameter parent here. Going back to Chrome, what we're going to give our quote parser is this div tag. So that's going to be our first quote parser. We're going to give it this div tag, and our second quote parser, we're going to give it this div tag, and the third quote parser, we'll give it this div tag. Previously with BeautifulSoup, we looked at loading using BeautifulSoup the entire page, and then we were able to search on the entire page using BeautifulSoup. But actually, when you find one element with BeautifulSoup, such as say you find this div using BeautifulSoup, you can then search only in that element. So what we're going to do is our quotes page is going to find these elements and is going to give each element to a quote parser object, and they are going to use that element to find their children. In this case, the children of this element will be the quote contents, the author, and the tags. Let's go back to PyCharm and quickly write these property methods here. The quote content is going to return, it's going to get a locator. That's going to be quote locators.content. And then it's going to return self.parent.select1 locator.string. Notice how self.parent is going to be that div tag that encloses the quote, but BeautifulSoup allows us to select and search for within the parent. It doesn't have to be only on the page itself, it can be on any of the elements. Okay, then for the author, is going to be fairly similar. The locator in this case is going to be the author locator, and then it's going to return self.parent select1 locator.string. So very similar. And finally the tags. The locator is going to be quote locators.tags, and it's going to return self.parent.select locator. Again, this is going to select all of the individual tag items that are available. If you wanted, you could extract the text of each element by doing e.string for e in this. So this will be definitely an option as well. Okay. Now, this doesn't make a lot of sense until we have sort of joined our program together and it all starts to make a bit more sense, believe me. I'm also going to add here a repr method that is going to return this quote, self.content by self.author. Okay. This is just so that when we run our application, we can print these quote parser objects out, and it may make a bit more sense. So far, what we will receive is a BeautifulSoup tag. That is the div that contains this quote. Within that div, there will only be one locator for the content, one for the author, and one for the tags. So we're not going to be able to get mixed up between different quotes at this level. Okay. Now let's go over to the quotes page, and we can begin sort of joining the program together, and it'll start to make a bit more sense. I'll see you in the very next video.
I think it's Steve Harvey that talks about the oak tree and the acorn. He says that acorn, genetically, at its most cellular level, has the ability to grow into a massive 150 foot tall tree. But if you plant that acorn in a shallow bucket, it will never reach its potential as an oak tree, even though the potential is within it. So if you constantly stay in your comfort zone, in a zone of familiarity, and you don't explore and try new things, you don't put your neck out on the line and risk losing a little money, being made to look dumb, being laughed at, then you are literally that acorn that has the potential to become a beautiful, massive tree with deep roots and branches that touch the clouds. But you have kept yourself in that box, and you will just be a sad little sapling.
Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to be creating our quotes page, and I think everything is going to make sense and it's going to click once we finish creating this and we write a couple of lines of code in our app.py. What I'm going to do in the quotes page is import BeautifulSoup. Notice how I didn't do that in the quote page because we didn't need to. Then I'm going to import our quote page locator, and also I'm going to import our quote parser. Then creating a quotes page, we're going to define an init method, and this one is going to take in the page content. So that's the entire HTML of the entire page. And we're going to load that using requests in a moment. Now, this already we know and love. We've done this in the past. We're going to say self.soup is BeautifulSoup of page and giving it an HTML parser. Then we're going to define a property in here, which is the quotes. And what this is going to do is it's going to grab the locator, which is the quotes page locators.quote. Then is going to quote tags. Is going to find all of them. So it's going to do self.soup.select with that locator. And finally, what it's going to do is it's going to return a quote parser for each element in quote tags. Okay, so hopefully this starts to make a little bit more sense. What we do is we find each of the divs that we're looking for, and each of the divs, we pass each one to a quote parser object. That quote parser can then use that parent to find children inside it. So it here is doing self.parent, which is the div, .select one of the content locator. So it's going to find the content locator within this parent and not within any other parent. Similarly for the author and similarly for the tags. So now this page has this quotes property, and what it returns are a group of objects of type quote parser, from which we can access the name of the author, the content of the quote, and the tags. So if we go to our app.py now, you'll see that this starts to make a bit more sense. I'm going to import requests, and from the quotes page, I'm going to import the quotes page. Quotes page, that one. Now, the first thing to do, of course, is to get the page content, which we must do using requests. So request.get http quotes2scrape.com.content. This is going to get the page and this is going to give me the content of the page. Now this entire content, everything we've loaded, we give it to our quotes page object. This now gets parsed using BeautifulSoup because the constructor here, the init method, does that. It gets the BeautifulSoup and parses the entire page. Going back to app.py, we can then do for quote in page.quotes print quote. When we print quote, that's gonna, well, first of all, page.quotes is going to give us quote parser objects. And each quote parser object has a wrapper method that is going to get called when we print it out. So when we print, it's going to go through each quote in the quotes list we got back, and it's going to print it out. Let's right-click app.py and run it. And there you have it. We get our quote objects like that. If you wanted to just print the name, content, not the name, the content of the quote, you could do that. And then you just get the contents of the quote here. Hopefully this makes a little bit more sense. Let's go over it again in the very next video. I'll see you there.
A lot of people say that nothing's impossible. I even said that nothing's impossible several times in my life. I lied. There's a lot of things that are impossible for you to do. But what happens is, when we come across something that's very hard, and we try it once or maybe twice, we then say, we're done, we can't do it anymore. Before you say something's impossible, do it and do it and do it to a level that people think that you might be f***ing crazy until you say it's impossible.
Hi and welcome back. Let's review our quotes project in this video. Instead of starting from the quote parser, let's start from the top of the project now. The first thing we do is, aside from importing things, we get the page content. This is the entire HTML content of the entire quotes page. We then give that content to our quotes page constructor, the init method. So let's go over there. That then initializes this BeautifulSoup object using the HTML parser. So this lets us search within this page. The quotes property of that finds a locator, which is this quotes page locator.quote, which is just div.quote. Okay. Then it selects all the instances of that selector. So every div that has a quote class will be selected by this. And if we go back to Chrome, we can see that the divs that have a class quote are all the individual quotes. Okay. And it's going to return a quote parser given each of those tags for E in the tags that we found. Remember, the tags that we found there are not strings. They are BeautifulSoup tags. So if we go into the quote parser, this parent will be a BeautifulSoup tag, which is that div. In BeautifulSoup, everything is a tag. So when you load the entire HTML page, that's a tag that you can search on. That's an HTML tag. When you load one of these parents, when you find one of these divs, that's just another tag. In this case, it's a div tag that you can search on as well. So now this quote parser has one of these divs, and in their properties here, we are searching under this parent only. And we're searching for the span.text, the small.author, and the different tags. In addition, this quote parser also has a wrapper method that allows us to print it out nicely. But of course, we can choose to print out specific properties if we choose. So hopefully this makes sense. The way this app is structured is to separate concerns, separate the locators away from your logic, and also separate the page from its components. In this case, we're separating the quotes page from an individual quote. Even though they're both sort of similar, I don't like calling a quote a page because really it's a component within a page. If you separate your scrapers in this way, I am confident you're going to be able to do anything you want with your scraping projects. Just because doing this is going to make them so much simpler to work with. And as soon as you want to add a new page, well, all you have to do is add a new file here and a new set of locators. If your locators change for any page, you just go there and modify them. And if you want to add a new component that you want to get data out of from a page, just add a new parser for it. Now, we're going to build another project as well in this section, looking at scraping books. And that's going to be a larger project with a bit more sort of logging and changing pages and things like that. So it's going to be a bit longer. So don't worry too much if not everything is crystal clear. We're going to do this again, and we're going to do more in the books project. So I'll see you in the very next video.
Life is not easy. It is not. Don't try to make it that way. Life's not fair. It never was. It isn't now, and it won't ever be. Do not fall into the trap, the entitlement trap, of feeling like you're a victim. You are not. Get over it and get on with it.
Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to be looking at our next project, which is going to be a similar scraping project, only using a more complex site, and our project is going to do a few more things. The first thing to do is to think of what we want to scrape, what we want to get out of the site. And in this case, our project is going to do a couple of things, but essentially, we're going to scrape this books website. And again, the URL is books.toscrape.com. The toscrape.com site is a collection of websites that we can scrape freely and that have been designed for scraping, so they're good things to try out. And what we're going to do in our app is we're going to go through all the books they've got in their collection, and we're going to sort of filter through them. We're going to see which ones we could buy based on price and on the reviews and things like that. Essentially, making a faster and more efficient way of navigating the collection in order to find the books that we want to buy. So as you can see, this is the website here on the left, and we've got the inspector on the right. If you want to open the inspector, you can right-click anywhere and press inspect. And what's happening here is that we have 1,000 books in the catalog or the collection. And each book is in this format, as we can see. We've looked at this before. At the start of this section, we sort of investigated how to extract data if we had one of these books only. We're going to take it a bit further now and scrape the entire page. So we've got all of these books in this format. And if we go to the inspector and we look at the HTML, we can start by finding out the body of the page. Then we've got a div which contains everything except the header. And then there's a page inner that has essentially all the content and also adds sort of a bit of margins around the corners. You can see that this div here is slightly bigger than the other one. So all that's happening there is we're constraining the content so that it displays a bit nicer. Then we've got the breadcrumbs. We've got this row here. And then we have the sidebar, which has the different topics. This is something we could scrape if we wanted. And then we're going into the book collection. So in here we have a few things, such as the different results that we've got. And then there's a section, and in this section we have a div, and that div is the one that contains a OL class row. This is an unordered list of the different books, and each book is inside a list item element. You can see that this one repeats itself because each book is inside a list item. Notice how the books are not formatted as list items, but nonetheless with HTML you can essentially display anything you want in any element. So in this case they're using list items. Maybe they thought that was easier for development purposes. Normally list items would be like bullet points. Now inside the list item is the stuff we already know. An article, which is the product pod that we've seen before. Then we've got a div which contains the image. We've got the star rating, the title. We've got the price in there, as well as the add to basket button. So what we're going to do is we're going to, again, create a parser for the books that is going to be each list item is going to be passed into it. And each parser is going to search for the information about that book within itself. Okay, so it's going to be essentially a copy of the last project with some added functionality. And of course, now that we have prices, we're going to use the regular expressions module to get the price out as a number. And we're also going to be dealing with getting the star rating out of there. And then doing some sort of sorting and filtering using that star rating. Nonetheless, my advice, as usual, is to, now that we have implemented the quote scraper, try to implement this project on your own. It's not going to be easy, but you already know a lot of the things that you need in order to tackle this. And if you structure your project using the pages and scrapers, essentially one page for this entire page and one scraper for the one parser for the books, then you should be able to tackle this pretty nicely. And you may not be able to do some of the more advanced things, but you'll be able to do some things. So I definitely recommend you give it a break before moving on to the next video and try to implement this on your own. Okay, so once you've done that, let's move on to the next video and we'll start implementing it there. I'll see you there.
What's the most emotional reaction you've gotten where you've given someone money and the reaction was not what you expected?
It's actually early on when I tipped a pizza delivery guy 10 grand.
Yeah.
And then he didn't really react too much. But then the next day he came back and I was just like, oh God, what is he gonna ask for more money? I didn't want to answer, but I answered it anyways. I opened the door and he just started crying. And he was like, I didn't even think this money was real. And he's like, I just took tomorrow off work and I haven't seen my kids in so long because I work every day. And like, I just got to spend a day with my daughter. And he's just like, this is the greatest day of my life. I'm so happy. And then he hugged me and he's crying and tears are going down my shirt. And I'm like, I don't even know what to like do. I was just like, wow. Like even I'm tearing up a little bit just thinking about it. You're tearing up a little bit.
Dude, it's touching, man.
Yeah.
Hi and welcome back. In this video, I just wanted to guide you through exactly what we're going to be getting from our HTML and the path or the locators that we're going to be getting, just because I know it's not so easy to look at in the browser. So this is our site, as you know, and we're going to start crafting our locators for the books. So we're going to retrieve each book as an entity and we're going to feed that to our book parser. So this is the div.pageinner. It contains essentially all of the page content except the header. The only reason why you might want to scrape the header is if you don't know the title of your site. But because we know that, we can start here at the div.page_inner. Inside that, we have a section which contains this content. So as soon as we start narrowing down our locator into the section, it loses context of the topics at the side and the breadcrumbs and the number of results and things like that. And finally, each individual book is a list item. And list items on this website are each individual book, and they also have a few classes in them, like col xs6. These columns are used for sizing. So at this point in time, the website has decided to use these sizes for the columns, but they may change in the future. So just keep an eye out in case it's not exactly this col xs6 class, in case it's a bit different. Okay, so when we use this locator and we ask BeautifulSoup to, select all of the elements, it's going to give us a bunch of tags, which are going to be these li tags that it has found. And each tag contains the info for a single book, but we must still go deeper and get that information out. So we need some deeper locators. The locators I'm about to show you are those that are inside this li tag. So for example, the title or the name of the book, we can extract from that element there in the green, and that will be article.productpod h3a. So inside the article.productpod tag, which is essentially the entire book as well, there is an h3 tag, a heading tag, and inside that h3 there's an a tag, which is a link. And a light in the ... is the text content inside that tag. But also the tag has a couple other properties, and we can extract the book's title from those properties as well. If we wanted the link, for example, if we wanted to click through and go to the book page, not the whole set of books, but just the individual book, in case we wanted to sort of read some more information about the book or scrape some more information about the book, there is a link in that title that you can click and go to the other page. And of course, the selector or the locator is going to be the same. If we want to extract the link, only we're going to have to access the href property of that. If you wanted to get the price out, that element down there, you will be looking for article.productPod, and then inside that there's a p tag that has a class price color. So we can use that tag to extract the price, and then you'll be using regular expressions to actually get the price out as a number. We've looked at that in the past in the regular expression section, how to do that. We're going to go over it again in this section. Finally, we're going to look at the rating. This book has 3 stars, and if we wanted to get the star rating, we are looking for article.productPod and then p.star-rating. Notice the dash is not an underscore, just one of the quirks of this website. We'll also find that the number of stars that we can see is not what we're going to be scraping. So this p tag here, this p.star-rating, actually has a property that contains the rating. So we're going to be using that instead of looking at the number of stars that are filled. That's just a bit more difficult. Okay, so just to recap, each book is that li tag. The name of the book, which is inside the li tag, is the article.productPod h3a. The link is also in that same tag. The price is inside p.pricecolor, and the rating is inside p.star-rating. So with this, we can construct our locator files. Let's do that in the next video.
I got out of the Army. I haven't spoken to my mom for 5 years. I have a new phone. She doesn't know my phone number. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm sitting there and I said, God, I don't believe you exist. But if you do, I want to hear my mom's voice right now. When I tell you 30 seconds later, my phone rang with a blocked number, I was so scared to answer the phone. And I answered the phone and it's her crying. So why are you crying? And I'm crying. She says, because God told me you were in pain. I had to call you. I'm like, what? And I'm just like, I can't even talk. So what's going on? I can't even tell her what I'm experiencing in that moment. Because it wasn't about her at that time. So I'm like, what the hell is going on here? This could be real. Like, is there really a higher power? Is somebody really listening to me? And if it is, what is the potential of what I can do with this person that listens to me that's a higher power?
Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to start with our book scraping project. It's going to be set up very similarly to our quote scraping project, just so you fully understand how I recommend setting up these scraping projects. So once again, let's create our files. We've got app.py, and for this project, app.py is going to be a sort of test file type thing where we're going to be running some of the commands written in our other files. Then we're going to have a few Python packages. Locators is going to be one of them. That's the one we're going to be working on in this video. We're also going to have pages, of course, for the different pages we'll have, and parsers, which are for specific sections of the page that we want to extract data from. So pages and parsers, pretty similar. Think of it as sort of containers and components if you've ever done any component development, or just as, whole pages, then interacting with parsers to extract information. In the locators, we're going to add 2 files for now. The all books page, which is going to be that page we've already seen. And we're also going to add books locators. Oh, book locators. Okay. Inside the book locators, we're going to create a class, book locators, and in here we're going to put in the locators that we came up with earlier, that I showed you in the previous video in that presentation. We're going to have a name locator, and this is going to be article.productPod h3a. Now I'm going to press Command D or Control D if you're on Windows to just duplicate this, and we're going to name this link locator. Notice how these two are the same for now, but I'm keeping them as a separate locators just in case the website decides to change later on. This is going to make my program a little bit more resilient. Then we're going to have a price locator, which is going to be used to get that p tag that contains the price. So again, article.productPod, p.price color. It's interesting that it's got this class here, price color. That's just because the price of the item has a color. So that's what the website's decided to go for in terms of the class name. But depending on the website, it may be different. Finally, we've got a rating locator, which again, article.productPod, p.star-rating. If you make any typos on this, you'll get some errors later on. So just make sure that these are correct. All of them have article.productPod at the start because the entire book is enclosed in this article tag. And then we're looking for an h3 within that article, anywhere inside it, and then a that should be within this h3. Similarly here, and same with these. Now let's go over to our page locators. We're going to have class, all books page locators. And here we're going to just have one thing for now. We're going to add more later. And this is going to allow us to find all of the books. So the locator that we place here should be able to find each list item that contains a book. The contents of that list item we're then going to pass to the book parser, which is going to use these locators to locate exact information. So here we're going to go for div.pageinner section li.call xs6. If you want to be more explicit and you want to add all of the classes inside this li tag, you can do that by just doing .call sm4, .call md3, .call lg3. So I'm going to leave it as this. Feel free to skip on these classes or maybe just include one of them, but I'd recommend including at least one class just in case there are other list items elsewhere on the page. Well, elsewhere inside this section that BeautifulSoup may get confused. So make sure to include at least one of the classes just to be sure. Now, with these locators, we are ready now to move on to the next video. We're going to be using them to extract information. Now, I'll see you there.
Care about other people's opinions. That's what I think is the number one thing. And when you step outside and you do what you do, dress and live for yourself and for the satisfaction of yourself. A lot of people do that just so someone can tell them that they're pretty. But the person that you should be waiting to hear "I'm pretty" from is yourself.
Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to be creating our books page. So let's go over to our pages folder and create a new Python file, which I'm going to call all books page. This page is going to be just a class called all books page. You can call it catalog page if you prefer, you know, any name is valid. This is just the name I'm going for, but you can change it. Now, this class is going to take in the entire HTML content and is going to parse it with BeautifulSoup. So in the init method, we're going to say self.soup equals BeautifulSoup of page content using the HTML parser. Of course, we'll need page content as an argument, as a parameter, and of course we'll need to import BeautifulSoup. Okay, make sure to have BeautifulSoup installed if you haven't done so already, although if you've been following the last few videos, you should be fine. Now, once we do this, once we create a new object of type allBooksPage and we give it the HTML content, that's immediately going to use BeautifulSoup to create this soup variable or property. Then we can use that soup property inside any of the methods to do things like find stuff. So I'm going to create a property called books that is going to find all of the books using our locator. So notice how we're doing self.soup.select and not self.soup.select1. The select is going to select every instance of this locator that it can find. And again, this locator is going to be this entire thing. And there are many li tags in the page, one for each book. So this is going to give us a BeautifulSoup tag for each li tag on the page. Of course, we have to import our locators. So from locators, all books page, import all books page locators. And this is convention, by the way, in Python. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but your imports from your local files should come underneath imports of other things. So if you're importing things from other projects that you've not created, those go at the top. Your imports go directly below them, and then you can put your code. And all imports always go at the top. Now, this is going to give us BeautifulSoup tags, but we don't want BeautifulSoup tags. We want to use our parser, which we've not created yet, in order to find some specific information from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in a book parser for E in this. Okay. All this is going to do is, again, iterate over all the tags that we find, and is going to create a book parser object using that BeautifulSoup tag passing in as an argument to this constructor. So we have to, of course, go and create the book parser, but we've already done something very much like this in a previous video at the start of this section, where we created a simple book parser class. So we're going to actually pretty much reuse that. So let's go into the next video and see what we can reuse from what we made in a few videos ago. I'll see you there.
People ask me, Sadhguru, how do you operate with all these people? All kinds of horrible questions they're asking, they're doing this, they're doing that. I said, my life is not about them, it's about me. It's about how I am. Because I have not given that freedom to anybody, that somebody can freak me, somebody can make me angry, somebody can make me happy, somebody can make me unhappy. These privileges I kept to myself. It's time you do that too. Because if somebody else can decide what can happen within you right now, isn't this the ultimate slavery? Huh? Isn't this? Someone else can decide what should happen within you. What happens around you, of course, so many people decide. What happens around us is not 100% ours. But what happens within me must be my making, isn't it?
Hi and welcome back. In this video we're going to be looking at some code we wrote a few videos ago and see if we can reuse it for what we've got here, the book parser we want to create. This all books page that we made in the last video takes in the entire HTML content and builds a BeautifulSoup object so that we can then search in it. Then it's got a books property that searches for our locator and then passes each tag it finds into our book parser. We mentioned that we wrote a similar book parser earlier on, so let's have a look at it. I'm just going to bring it in from my other screen just so you can see it. We wrote this parsed item class earlier on in this section, which took the entire page content and built a BeautifulSoup object. And then it had a few properties like name, link, price, and so forth that used self.soup in order to find something inside this page. And as you can see, it used sort of some locators and it then selected things, and it went on to extract the title and the link and so forth from different things. What you may not have noticed is that the content of the HTML that we looked at earlier on in the section is actually the same content that's going to come in to our book parser in our other project. We've got here the article with class product pod, we've got the sort of P start rating, we've got an H3 with an A tag inside. You know, it's the same thing. We're going to get essentially the entirety of this thing into our book parser. So we can pretty much reuse everything that we've got here. Except, instead of receiving the page content, our book parser is going to receive the tag, which is already a BeautifulSoup object. So let's go ahead and copy this into a new class. I'm going back here to my project. I've moved the parsed item we wrote earlier on in the section to another screen. We're going to right-click onto our parsers project, onto our parsers package, and create our book parser. Okay. Then we're going to copy the parsed item, and I'm just going to copy it, and then we're going to make a few changes. So I'm going to copy the parsed item here, and I'm going to rename it to book parser. And then we are going to make a few changes. We're going to first of all import the locators. So we're going to do from locators, book locators, import book locators. And then we're going to replace all instances of the parsed item locators that we no longer need for these book locators. Notice how previously we already dealt with using regular expressions to get the price out and things like that. So we're going to review that quickly, but we're not going to go into too much detail as to how that works because we've already seen that. And instead of the page, as we mentioned earlier, we're now going to get a sort of a parent element. And we no longer need to use BeautifulSoup here because the parent is already a BeautifulSoup object. Whenever you find something with BeautifulSoup, the result of finding that is a BeautifulSoup object that you can search on. So you can potentially find a specific object and then use that object to find other things and so forth. So that's quite nice. I don't like self.soup as a name. I'm going to call it self.parent just so it's a bit more explicit where we're searching. We're not searching on the entire sort of soup of the page. That's what it normally means. We're searching on a specific parent of this book. We're then going to follow Pep 8 by allowing a couple of lines there, and we're going to import RE, of course, to do our searching here for the price. Okay, so once again, let's review exactly what's going on here. We have, first of all, our name property. That's going to use the book locator's name locator to select one particular element to follow matching that locator and then extracting the title attribute of that. Okay. The link is going to use that locator again. It's going to find one and it's going to extract the href attribute of that. So notice how both the name and the link are finding the same tag. And that tag happens to have two attributes. Title, which is the title of the book, and href, which is the link that the link that takes us to the book page with some more details and things like that, just in case we're interested. The price is then going to find that p tag that has the price in this format, and it's going to extract it. The assumption here is that there's always going to be a pound symbol in front, and that there's always going to be some sort of period in the middle. That's what this regular expression syntax means. 0 to 9 is a range, and we're getting at least one of these, and more if there are more, the dot in the middle, and then 0 to 9 plus. This is probably not going to be any more than two numbers at the end, but you know, it could be more if they decide to do something weird. Then we're going to search, and that's going to give us two groups. One group that matches the entirety of the string, another group that matches whatever's in the brackets. That's the group we're interested in because whatever's in the brackets is going to be essentially this, 51.77 as a string. And then we use the float function to turn this into a float that will look like that. We can then use that to do things like sorting if we want to find the cheapest books, for example. Finally, the rating is going to find that p tag with a rating locator, and it's going to select it. It's going to get the class attribute from it that contains these two attributes, star rating, and also a word representing the number of stars in the book. So that could be 4, it could be 3, it could be 2. Then we're going to get each of the classes in here, but only if they're not equal to the star rating class. So presumably that's going to be a list of a single item, which is the string 3. And we're going to return that very first item. Okay. I also mentioned earlier on in the course that you could use a filter function here if you prefer. That's something you can do as well. Now, something that I'm not a big fan of is returning this string 3 as a rating. I'd much rather return a number representing the number of stars it's got, just because when you're working with numbers, it's much easier to do sorting. And if we wanted to find, for example, all the books that are 5 stars or all the books that are over 4 stars, it's going to be easier if we've got a number as opposed to a string. Sorting with strings is not so easy. So what we're going to do is we are going to go to the top of the book parser and we're going to create a static or class property, which is going to be called ratings. And any class property, all that means is that it doesn't live inside self. So it's not like self.ratings. It lives inside the class. So you cannot change it by doing self.ratings equals something else. And we'll access it by doing bookparser.ratings. And this is going to be just what you'd expect. 1 matches to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, 4 to 4, and 5 to 5. Okay, now we've defined this class property. I'm going to show you how to use it just now. And all this does is a dictionary that if you look for the key 1, it's going to give you the number 1. And so forth for every other number. Now, instead of returning rating classes 0, what we can return is something else. We can say rating is, or rating number is bookparser. Bookparser.ratings. This is how you access the ratings thing inside bookparser. The same way that you'd access a particular function, bookparser.ratings, and then in here, we're going to do .get rating classes 0. And we're going to return rating number. So this is a dictionary, bookparser.ratings. The get method of a dictionary is going to return the value associated with whatever it is we pass it. So if this is the string 3, it's going to go up to the dictionary and give us the number 3. But if it does not find anything with this class in the dictionary, it's not going to return a key error. Instead, it's going to return none. Okay? So this is none if not found. Yep. If you wanted to return something else other than none, you can do that by adding another argument to the get method. So you can say, for example, 9, which would be a pretty silly thing to do, I think. But if the rating class that we passed in is not found in our bookparser.ratings dictionary, then it will return 9. Or it can return like -1, or, it can return hello, or whatever you want. And if it makes it easier, you can use it as a named argument here, and you can say default is 9. And this is what gets returned if this was not found in the dictionary. Because I'm not really thinking that we're not going to be able to find anything in the dictionary, we're going to leave it as none for the default. But we'll see what happens as we scrape the site. We'll see if we find anything weird. And that's it. We have now been able to create our book parser. We can go back to our all books page and make sure to import it. So from parsers.bookparser import book parser. And as soon as we pass in the page content to this page, we'll be able to access the books property, which is going to find all the li tags and pass them into the book parser. Then we'll have a list of book parser objects. And for each object, we'll be able to do things like access the name property or the link and so forth. Hopefully this makes sense. Let's go over to the next video, and we're going to be writing a little bit of code in our app.py just to use this page and extract some information. I'll see you in the next video.
Now, fear is going to be a player in your life, but you get to decide how much. You can spend your whole life imagining ghosts, worrying about the pathway to the future, but all there will ever be is what's happening here, and the decisions we make in this moment, which are based in either love or fear. So many of us choose our path out of fear disguised as practicality. What we really want seems impossibly out of reach and ridiculous to expect, so we never dare to ask the universe for it. I'm saying, I'm the proof that you can ask the universe for it.
Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to be trying out what we've written so far by adding a few lines of code here into app.py. The first thing we want to do is, of course, be able to load the page that we want to scrape. So we need to download the HTML contents of it, and we're going to do that with the requests library. If you've not installed the requests library yet, make sure to do that, and we've looked at how to do that earlier on in this section. Then we're going to import our page. So from pages, all books page, import our page. And finally, we are going to get the page content. So get the page content, we just do requests.get, and then goes the URL. So that's http books.toscrape.com. Now this is going to get us a response from the server, which includes the page content and also includes a few more things like a sort of a status code, whether everything went well or not, and so forth. If we want to get the content, we just do .content. And that's going to get us the content property of that request, of that response, which includes all the HTML. Then we're going to build our page object. And finally, we're going to go and get all the books out of that page. So the books are going to be page.books. When we do this, remember this is a property of our page. So if we go into our page, this is a property decorated method. So when we do that, this is going to run and it's going to return us all the book parser objects for each of the elements that were found using this locator, which is the list item. So that's going to give us book parser objects. Then we can go back and say for book in books, print book, for example. What this will do is it'll call the repr method of the book. So if we go over to our book, we can see that there is no repr method here. So it will just call the default Python repr method. If we want to make it a bit better, we can add our own repr in here. And we can say, for example, return book with self.name, costing self.price, and then self.rating stars, like that. Okay, so this is what we're going to print out now. When we go back to our app.py, we can right-click app.py and run it. And there we have it. We get all our books in that page. Alive in the Attic, costing $51.77 and has 3 stars, and so forth for every book. Notice how we get the number 3 because of the conversion we did earlier on in the book parser. Down in the rating, we are not getting the class anymore, we are now getting this thing using the book parser ratings. So this is how you can test out that everything is working. If you wanted to make it better, which I'd advise making it a bit better to make it a bit more useful, you could create a menu for this program that would allow you to, for example, allow the user to only get books that are 5 stars, or maybe get the books that are under £10 or $10, and so forth. So there's a lot of improvements we can make here with filtering. Let's go and add some of those improvements in the next video, where we're going to work on a menu for our users just to be able to interact with this data a bit more easily. I'll see you in the next video.
Don't listen to the naysayers. Everything I ever did, the thing that I heard out of people's mouth was, that's impossible. That can't be done. Or no. It was all no, no, and it can't be done, it's impossible. I ask a studio executive, I say, I want to get into movies. I want to be a leading man. He started laughing. Imagine, you go from studio executive to studio executive, from agent to agent, from manager to manager, and they all said exactly the same thing. But you know something? I didn't give a shit. So whenever someone said to me, it can't be done, I heard it can be done. When they said no, I heard yes. And when they said it's impossible, I heard it is possible. So when someone says no, this is a stupid idea, you in your mind, you don't have to say it, but in your mind just say this, fuck you, you're an asshole.
Hi and welcome back. In this video we're going to look at sorting through our books to find only the best books by rating and by price. Then in the next video we're going to add that into a menu. For now, we're going to make our app return, or rather export, these books so that we can import them from our menu. So we're going to delete this for books, for book in books, and we're going to end with this books being equal to page.books. In Python, every variable that you see here, requests, all books page, page content, page, and books, are automatically exported so that anybody else can import them. For example, as another example of what's happening here, if we go to our all books page, you can see that it creates a few things. It creates this class, all books page, this book parser, all books page locator, and BeautifulSoup. These 4 things are all available sort of at the top level of the file. When you go into app.py, you could import BeautifulSoup. It would be a weird thing to do, but this is something you can do. And so the purpose of me telling you this is, as soon as you create a variable like books equal page.books, which is the result of launching this scraper, and getting all that data out, this variable can now be imported by another file. When that file tries to import books, we will run through this entire file, end up calculating books, and be able to import it. So let's go over and create a new file that I'm going to call menu in the top level. And from app, we're going to import books. Okay. Then we're going to define a function print best books, for example. What this is going to do is it's going to sort the books that we've got here, this list of book parser objects, and it's only going to give me the top 5 books, which means they're going to be the 5-star books, or some of them at least are going to be 5-star books. Okay, so the best books are going to be, and what we need to do here is sort the books by their rating. So what we're going to do is say sorted books, and the key is going to be lambda x dot rating. Okay, all this does, sorry about that. All this does is it takes the books list, well, the collection, and it sorts it. For every element, it's going to look at this key function to see what it's sorting by. And in here, we're telling it to sort by the rating property. So what it's doing is it's getting the first book, calling this function on it. That's going to give it the book's rating, and then it's going to sort by that. So we're going to end up sorting with this rating key. Then we can say for book in best books, print book. Now, this is going to give you a list of books, because that's what we gave it in. So if you wanted, you could slice this list to only get the top, say, 10 books. Just like so, as we know from our list slicing. Now, of course, we must run this function in order for it to do something. And again, just to recap, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import books from the app file. So that's going to go over to app, and it's going to run app. And it's going to go through all of this. This is going to take a while because it has to get the books page and sort of parse through it. And eventually it's going to end this, and then we're going to import books, which is now going to be available. And then we're going to sort them and print them out. So let's right-click our menu and run it. And there you have it. Now we get 10 books that are all 1 star. By the way, a small side improvement you could try is this 1 stars. It should probably be 1 star without the S, but you do want the S if you have many stars. So this is a small improvement you can try out if you want. Notice how all these books have 1 star, 1 star, 1 star, 2 stars, 2 stars, 3 stars. So we are sorting by default here on ascending. Okay? And the easiest way to sort in a descending way is to multiply this by -1. Now, instead of starting at 1 and going up, we're going to start at the lowest number and go up. So instead of 1 to 5, we're going to sort from -5 to -1, which is going to give us the order that we want. If we run this again, you can see now we get our 5-star books, then our 4-star books, and then our 3-star books. Okay, I hope this makes sense. all we're doing is we're essentially reversing the order of things. This is how you could get your best books. If you wanted your cheapest books, it would be exactly the same thing, really. So much so that I'm going to copy and paste, which is not something you should do. And now instead of sorting by rating multiplied by -1, we're going to sort by price, and that's going to give you your cheapest books. Now I'm going to use a PyCharm shortcut here, which is Shift and the F6 key, and that's going to allow me to rename all the usage of this variable everywhere inside this function. So as you can see, this one got renamed as well. So that's Shift F6 if you're interested. We can also print the cheapest books now. And you can see there that we get, it starts here. This is the cheapest book. Or is it? Yeah, it's possible that this one's this one must be the cheapest book. This one here is where it starts. This is the cheapest book. Then it goes up to 17, 17, 20, and so forth up until 37. If you wanted to make it a bit more obvious, you could print something like that. Just so it's a bit easier to see where it starts and where it ends. And these are indeed the cheapest ones. Notice how there's little correlation between the quality of the book and the price in terms of the star rating, because this page is random. Okay, the prices and the stars are assigned randomly, so there's no logic that goes on in here. Okay. Now, if you wanted to sort by multiple things, you can also do that. So that's something you can do as well. Let's have a look at how to do that. All you've got to do if you want to sort by two things is, instead of returning here the value that you want to sort by, as you can see here, we're sorting by best, so only by stars. We've got 54.23 at the start. You can actually, not do that. You can return a tuple of things, and then it's going to sort by this one first, and if it finds a few books that have the same rating, it's going to sort them by price. And you can continue adding keys here if you want. So if we run this again, now you can see that we get the cheaper book in front, then this cheaper book as well, until we get to the more expensive ones. Okay, but these are all 5 stars. Then you have a cheaper book here, but it's 4 stars. So the most important sorting criteria was the stars, because that was the first thing in our tuple. The second most important was the price. Okay, so this is how you can do multiple sorting if you need to. So that's pretty useful. Okay, that's it for this video. I just wanted to show you how to do the sorting of these books. Now we're going to look at constructing the menu itself. I'll see you in the next video.
Don't make the mistake of being so understanding and forgiving that you overlook the fact that you're being disrespected.
Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to be constructing our menu. It's going to be really straightforward. What we're going to do is we're going to give the user some choices to make. And I'm going to paste in here what exactly the choice is going to be. So let's say the user has these choices. They can enter one of the following. The character B to look at 5-star books, the best books. C to look at the 5 cheapest books, or the 10 cheapest books. N to just get the next available book on the collection. Let's say the catalog here instead. And they can type Q to exit. And then they're going to enter their choice. So you know exactly how to do this now. You have all the tools you need. This one here has not been implemented for you, how to get the next available book on the catalog, but I'm sure that you can use generators to do this. So give it a go. Try to implement this menu yourself. Allow the user to get cheapest books, 5-star books, the next book, and also run that on a loop so that they can always exit the application. I hope you managed. Let's get started on creating our menu. So down here, I'm going to create our menu property here. And I'm going to say user input is input of user choice. While the user input is not Q, we're going to run our menu. So we're going to say if user input is equal to B, we're going to print the best books. If the user input is equal to C, we're going to print the cheapest books. If the user input is equal to N, we're going to somehow get the next book. We're going to implement that in a moment. Else, we're going to print, please choose a valid command. I think that's a reasonable thing to do. And finally, we're going to, once again, give them the choice to give us another thing that they want to do. Then at the very end, we're going to run the menu. Let's implement the getNextBook function. All that we have to do in order to get the next book is create a generator on the books. And then getNextBook can just print out the next of that. That is how simple it can be using generators. You don't have to worry about, what was the last book you looked at, or keeping an index or something of how many books you've gone through. No, just create a generator for the list. Very efficient, because it doesn't actually do anything until you start getting the next book. So it doesn't take up any memory, or not a lot of memory. It's not completely free, but it's essentially free. It doesn't take up any processing power. Every time you press next, it just gives you the next book in that generator. It doesn't actually go through the entire list or anything like that. So that's a great way of setting up this getting the next of something. Okay, let's run it and see what happens. I get to enter one of the following. Let's type B, and then I see sort of the best books in here. 5-star books, 4-star books. It's pretty awesome. Maybe I want to buy one of these. C, you can look at the cheapest books, just in case you're wanting to spend a little less money on a book. And some of them are not so good, but others are pretty good. So maybe you can find something good there. And if you just want to go through the books, just press N. And then you get, 1, A Light in the Attic. N again, Tipping the Velvet. It's not a very good one. Soumission. I guess that's French, or maybe it's some sort of weird submission thing. And that's also not very good. And that's it. Now, you cannot go back on the catalog. I'll leave that to you to implement. But this is how you can see the different things that are in the catalog. I guess you could go back just by scrolling up. So that works too. Then you can press Q to terminate. Okay, so there are a few more improvements we're going to make on this project. The first improvement we're going to make is we are going to scrape all of the pages in the catalog, not just one. That way we're going to get a much larger collection. So we're going to look at how to scrape multiple pages, how to go through the different pages of this site. And we can also add logging, just so it's a bit easier to spot when things go wrong and also what's going on in the program. I'd encourage you to try to do these two, particularly the logging, because we've already looked at logging. It's quite simple. All you have to do is, import login, set up the logger, and start logging in different places. I'd encourage you to do that, and try to set up the looking at different pages if you can, but if not, just wait and we will do it here. For the logging, one of the most important things about logging, and why I'm recommending that you do it, is deciding where to log and what to log. Okay, because you can log at every line, and that's going to make your code look really ugly. Or you can log too little, and then you're not going to get enough information. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Try to implement the logging yourself, then we'll go back in the video and do it here, just so you can see how much I would log and where I would log. That's it for this video though, so I'll see you on the next one. Hi and welcome back. Just a small aside actually, before we move on to anything else, I wanted to show you a slightly more efficient way of creating your menus. Instead of having all these if statements, you could just put the user choices into a dictionary, where B is assigned to print best books, the function, not the result. C to print cheapest books. And N to get next book. Once you've got this, you can essentially get rid of all of these statements here. Instead of user input equal B, we can say user input in B, C, N. So this is going to give us true if the user input is one of these things. And if it is, we can just do user choices, user input. This is going to give us the function that is associated with the input inside this dictionary. And we can run that. So this is a much more efficient way of doing the same thing. Essentially, you get to type less code, it does the same thing. Okay, that's it for this video. Just wanted to show you this because, you're going to be writing menus quite often. Might as well know the best way of doing that. And I'll see you on the next video. Hi there and welcome back. In this video, we're looking at how to get data out of multiple pages. So the most important thing is for us to look at what the different pages looks like and how we can go to them. Any patterns you can recognize from doing this are going to help you so much in your programming. As you can see, the URL right now of this page is books.toscrape.com. If we go down to the bottom and we go to the next page, which by the way, there are 50 of them, this is going to be an important number later on, you can see that the URL changes. And it changes to /catalog/page-2. But before it was not page-1. So we can see that we've gone to page-2, and if we go over to the next page, it'll be page-3, and so forth. So what happens if we go to the first page? This is the same page that we were seeing earlier on at the start, but now it has /catalog/page-1.html. That means that the home page is either the catalog/page-1 or it can be just books.toscrape.com. Because all the pages can be accessed as /catalog/page-1, this could be helpful for us in extracting all the data we need. Okay, the next thing is if you want to go to the next page, all you have to do is request a different URL. You don't have to click the button. You don't have to make Python click buttons or anything like that. Not that that would work. You can't do that with the knowledge we've got. But you can request a different URL entirely. So if you want to get data from 50 pages, which is what we've got, you just have to do a for loop 50 times and each time get all the books out of the page and put them into a list. And at the end, you'll end up with a big list of all your books. I'd recommend you try this out now. And then we're going to implement this a bit better. And we're also going to look at how to extract the 50 from this place here so that if the number of pages changes, you're only going to get, or you're going to get all of the pages, or less pages if there are fewer pages. Okay. That's it for this video. Go and try to implement this. Get the 50 pages by calling this URL instead of the URL we've got right now. And then we'll go and implement this ourselves. I'll see you on the next video.
75 years. That's how much time you get if you're lucky. 75 years. 75 winters, 75 springtimes, 75 summers, and 75 autumns. When you look at it like that, it's not a lot of time, is it? Don't waste them. Get your head out of the rat race and forget about the superficial things that preoccupy your existence and get back to what's important now. Right now, this very second. And I'm not saying drop everything and let the world come to a grinding halt. I'm saying that you can become a seeker. You can be loving more. You can be taking some chances. You can be living more. You can be spending more time with your family. You can be getting in touch with the part of you that lives instead of fears, the part of you that loves instead of hates.
Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to get data out of multiple pages. And that's going to be really simple because each page has essentially the same content. And all we have to do is, instead of getting a list of book parsers, which is from one page, we're going to get the book parsers from each page and then we're going to join them all into a single list. And that's going to give us a list of all the books in each page. So what we're going to do is, instead of saying books equal page.books, what we're going to do is we're going to start by going over each of the pages. So instead of going over this page here, we are going to do for page num in range 50. There are 50 pages. We're going to say the URL is this here. But also catalog / page - page underscore num +1 .html. And of course, this has to be an F string in there. What this is going to do now is construct the URL of the page we want, starting at 1. Remember, the range function starts at 0, goes 0 to 49. Our pages go from 1 to 50, so we have to add 1 to the page num that we've got. And then all we do is get the URL. Page content equal requests.get URL.content. And of course, construct the page with the page content. And then we are going to make sure to put them into our list. So that's going to be books.extend page.books, like that. Now, because we've got page 1 here, we can start, of course, at page 2. So our range can go from 1 to 50, which is going to be 48 numbers. So page 2 is going to be the first page we're going to get in this section. And we're going to start with page 1, which is actually this one. Remember how the page 1 and the page that has nothing in terms of the catalog and page number is also page 1. So this is page 1 here. And then what we do is we get the books pages, then we go over the rest of the pages and extend that list by the page books that we have just downloaded. Okay. So by the time this file finishes running, books will contain the information of all the pages. Now, notice there is something important though, which is that the 50 is hard-coded. And sometimes you won't want that. Sometimes you'll want to make sure that you get the page count from the page itself so that you don't go wrong. For example, if they add more books to the collection, the page count might increase. Let's try this out though, first of all, by running our menu and see whether anything changes. Let's press play in the menu. Notice how this takes a while now. It takes a while because it's having to go through all of the pages and downloading each of them. So it takes a while. Then we can do B, and now we get all the books. Notice how now all the books we get are 5-star books, whereas before we got a few 5-star, a few 4 stars. That's because now we have more books, and therefore there are a larger number of 5-star books. Similarly, if we get just the cheapest books, there'll be books that are lower price. In this case, we've got a £10 one here that is 5 stars. And we've got a few other 10-pounders here. So as you can see, it doesn't even go over 10 because there are so many books now that it doesn't go over that when you only get the 10 cheapest ones. And if you went next and next, you would be here for a long time. The A Light in the Attic book is still the first book, but now there are many more books in the collection. Of course, there are more things you can tell your users, like how many books there are in the collection. You can tell them which ones are in stock or not, although you'd have to look at another property in the book parser in order to do that. So there's quite a lot of stuff you can do there. One other area of improvement would be, other than the 50 being hard-coded, would be to get all these URLs at the same time, or more or less at the same time, and doing essentially parallel downloading things simultaneously. This is something that Python can do, and we may look at that later on in the course. But for now, we'll settle for downloading one at a time. And when it's finished downloading, moving on to the next one. Later on, we can look into doing them at the same time. Okay, so that's it for requesting a larger number of pages. As you can see, it's very simple. Let's go and not hard code the page count. So we're going to get the 50 from the page as opposed to putting the number here. Let's go and do that in the next video. I'll see you there.
Don't waste your time. Do you know that everybody alive gets exactly the same amount of time we get all there is? It's what we do with it that makes the difference. Don't waste your life. Set your goals high. Quit thinking about what's wrong. Start thinking what's right. Love a little more, hate a little less. You have no idea what you're capable of doing. Make up your mind today, you're going to figure it out.
Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to get the page count from the page itself as opposed to hard coding it to 50. So instead of 50, we want page.pageCount, for example. Now this is going to be a property of our all books page. So let's go into there and add it in. What we'll want to do is, of course, have some property here that says page count. And it'll return, well, we're going to start with 50, but of course it's going to return something coming from the page. Let's go over to Chrome and find out what that might be. Here we have now moved over to Chrome where we've got the page, and we're going to right click and inspect. This is going to bring us over to the inspector and it's going to highlight the thing we've inspected. In this case it's an li, not too interesting. If we go down to the very bottom and we right click and inspect the 50, we will now get something a bit more interesting, which is this pager here. And I'm just going to expand this. And notice how the website changes, but the HTML is not going to change, so this is fine. Then we have a bunch of things in here. We have a li, which has a class of current, and that contains page 1 of 50. In there, we have a UL, which is a pager. By the way, I know I'm scrolled too high up there. So this is the pager there. That's inside a div, which is inside another div, which is inside the section. So as you can see, fairly similar to where the different different books are. We've got, instead of inside that row class, we've got a pager. And inside that pager class, that UL, we have a list item, which is the current class that has the page 1 of 50. So what we're going to do is extract this class here. And what we're going to do is go over to the top div page inner. Then we're going to get the section. Then we're going to get the pager. And then we're going to get the li current. And that's going to give us the page 1 of 50. So let's go over back to PyCharm and set this up. Let's open the all books page locators. And here we're going to add a new locator. This locator is going to be the pager locator. And it's going to be div.pageinner section ul.pager li.current. That's going to give us that element we just found that contains page 1 of 50. Going back to the all books page, instead of returning 50, we are going to get the content from that tag. So we're going to do content equals self.soup.find, select one, all books page locators dot pager dot string, and that's going to give us page 1 of 50. And then we're going to use regular expressions to extract the 50. And I think you can do that. Looking at the currency we looked at earlier in the book parser, you can do the same thing for page 1 of 50. And what we're interested in this case is the 50 that comes at the end. So using the regular expression module and the search function inside it, I think you can find this. Give this a go and then come back to the video and we will continue. I hope you managed. All that we have to do is, of course, first of all, define our pattern, which is going to be page 0 to 9 plus of, and then inside brackets 0 to 9 plus because this is going to be page 1 or page 10 or 20 or whatever of 50, for example. And inside the brackets, remember, we're going to get our group when we do search. So then we're going to create our matcher, which is going to be re.search of pattern in content. We have to import re. And another tidbit of Python convention. When you import a module, I think I may have said this earlier, when you import a module, make sure that it's at the top. Other module imports that you don't import from your own code go underneath it. And finally, your own code imports go below that. So this style of imports go at the very top. And then we've got the number of pages, which is an int of matcher.group1. Remember, matcher group 0 is going to be the entire page 1 of 50. The first group, group 1, is going to be whatever's inside the brackets. And if you have multiple sets of brackets, that would be then group 2 and group 3 and so forth. And that's it. We then return pages, and that will give us the number of pages in the whole site. Let's go back to app, and instead now we can see that this has not gone yellow anymore, which was an error before. Now it is page.page count. It seems valid. We can run the menu again. Let me close that. And we shouldn't get any errors, but it should take a while. And there we have it. It seems to be loaded. We can get the best books, and we can see that they are there. And so that's pretty awesome. We now have successfully extracted some more information from the page, and as you can see, there's really nothing too magical going on here. All that we're doing is selecting or finding the locator that we want to use in your browser, and then just getting it, or maybe doing some regular expression to extract something from it. Regular expressions, very powerful, can be a bit confusing, so I'd recommend you study them in more depth as you advance your knowledge of programming. It can be really useful. But that's it for this video. I just wanted to show you another example of extracting some data from the site and how straightforward it is. All you're looking for are patterns. So, with that said, I'll see you on the next video. Hi and welcome back. In this video we're going to add logging to our scraping app, just so you get a bit better of an idea of how to add logging to an application like this. By the way, I always recommend adding logging as you start your application and not add the logging all at the end like we've done here. When you start, as you develop, you can add logging and it'll make more sense. Once you're done, you sort of lose a bit of the bigger picture, and sometimes adding logging can be a bit more tricky. So by all means, add the logging while you develop, not all at the end. But nonetheless, in order to save you time, not to add logging every video and so forth, we add it all at the end here. But again, don't do this normally. The first thing we have to do is to import the logging module, and then we're going to configure the logging module. So we're going to do logging.basicconfig, and then in here we're going to pass in format, which is going to be the format of the logger. And this is in old Python string format syntax. You've seen this before, I've showed you this earlier. And what we're going to do is print out the current time and the current level, like debug or info and so forth. But this is always going to be 8 characters long, so that the longest level, critical, will be the same width as the shortest level, info. They're all going to be 8 spaces, and it's just going to pad with spaces at the end. Then we're going to add the file name. By the way, the S at the end just means string. It's just Python's way of assuring that what we're printing out here are strings. D is for number. And finally, we're going to add the message, which is going to be an S as well. So as you can see, our format is the time, then the level name, file name, and line number of where this was logged, and finally, the message that we logged. The date format, that's what this argument is for, is what format you want to print your dates in. %D, %M, %Y is going to be date, month, and year, year as 4 digits, and then %H, %M, %S is going to give you hours, minutes, and seconds. So I think this is pretty good accuracy there. The level is going to be logging.debug as a start, and then we can turn it down to info or even to warning if we want. And finally, if you pass in a file name here like logs.txt, then it's just going to write all your logs to that file instead of showing them on the console. So this is normally a good idea. Then we're going to get a logger. So we're going to say logger, cannot type, logger equals logging.getLogger. And we're going to get our base logger, which is going to be called scraping. Okay, so in app.py, the logger is going to be called scraping. And as soon as you do get logger and you pass in the name, the logging module is going to create a logger in the background. In any other file, when you pass in the same name, it's going to get the same logger. So there's only one instance of a logger at any given time. This is, in case you're interested, an example of a singleton pattern in software development. This is an implementation of a singleton. If you don't know what a singleton is, don't worry. We're going to look into that much later on in the course. Okay, then we can start logging using this logger. So what can we log at line 13? Well, whenever we import something from app, we're going to run through these lines of code, then start getting the books, and then finally iterate over all the pages and get all the books in each page. What we can start logging here is that we are about to load the books list. Loading books list. By the way, my typos are generally caused by me having a microphone on my face and not being able to see my keyboard at all. So I apologize for any typos. So what we're saying here is we're loading the books list, and that's what's going to appear in our logs when we run this. Let's run the menu again. It's going to go through all of this stuff. It's going through, well, it has already gone through line 13. And it's now loaded everything. We can see, for example, the best books, and we can exit. Then you get here logs.txt. So let me open that up. You can see that this contains quite a lot of stuff. One info message at the top, us saying app.py line 13, loading books list. And then it's got a bunch of debug messages. These debug messages are not added by us. They were printed out by another library that prints out debug messages, and that's the requests library. So here it just says starting a new HTTP connection to books.toscrape.com, and then it's starting another one to books.toscrape.com, but now it's trying to get catalog/page2-html, and so forth, page 3, 4, 5, and so forth, up all the way up to 50. And as you can see, you also get the response. So that's the code 200. That means all is good. So these logs here tell you that all your requests to the page succeeded because they're all code 200. So this is good. If you don't want to see these messages because you're not interested in such a low-level operation of your application, all you have to do is turn the level up to info, and then they will disappear. Okay? So if you're showing a debug message that is only for when you're developing and you want to know exactly what's going on, use debug. If you want to give some information that is not needed, use info. And of course, if you want to talk about warnings and errors and criticals and so forth, use those levels. But normally you'll be using debug info at this level. Okay. For example, we could put a debug message here, logger.debug, creating all books page from page content. Like that. Maybe not the most necessary message, but if there is a problem between the debug message and this message here, you know that something has gone wrong retrieving the content of the page. Now, let's go over to our books page and we can do some logging in there as well. Let's go in here. Once again, all we have to do, import logging, and down here, create our logger. And inside the logger here, oh, by the way, I'm gonna make sure to use the right letter there. We're gonna say scraping dot all books page. This is going to give me a child logger of the scraping logger, the base logger that we defined earlier. And so all configuration and everything is going to be inherited. So if anything, if we'd set up anything on the scraping logger, it would also be available on this child logger. But generally, the usefulness is also to keep them related. So you know that this logger is also related to your main logger. They're part of the same application. You know, you've written them. It's not like some other library is doing the logging for you. Okay. So here we could add something like parsing page content with BeautifulSoup. Inside the books function, you could add something. Like that, finding all books in the page using the all books page locator.books. This is going to give you the locator in your logs. So then as you're analyzing the logs, if something goes wrong, you can look back and see what locator you tried to use and then identify if maybe it's changed now, if something does go wrong. Okay. Similarly, in the page count here, you could add some logging, logger.debug, finding all number of catalog pages available. Yeah. And then you can do things like logger.info, found number of catalog pages available. Ooh. Something like that. This is going to print an info message, so it's going to appear even if if you have debug disabled, but that can be useful. I think that printing out this message can be interesting, so that in your logs, if you do strip out the debug messages, you still see how many pages you're going to go through. And that can be interesting. Okay. And here we're going to debug the message that we've managed to extract the number of pages as an integer. If we fail, we know there's something wrong with our pattern or something here. Notice how, by the way, I'm putting these things around backticks. That's just to tell me that this is a value that's come from the code. It's not just a string. This will appear on the logs as backtick page 1 of 50 backtick. And then you can look at it and see, okay, this is something that's actually been printed from the code, and it's not just a string that we've printed out in the logs. So if this is, for example, like none, you maybe think there's an error there. So that's why it's in backtick. So it's a bit easier to see. Okay. We can now go to our book parser, for example, and see what we've got there. And we can, again, import the logging module and create our logger. And that's it. Then we can use this logger inside the module here. We could do something like this. New book parser created from the parent. And this is actually going to print out the entire HTML that you decided you wanted to create a book parser from in your code. So this is going to be a really long log because you're going to print out the entire HTML of the parent, but it can be useful for when you're debugging something that went wrong in your book parser. So I'm going to leave it as that, but you may want to print something less verbose, less less HTML code in here if you are going to be using this extensively. Okay. Here we print that we're finding the book name, and then down here we're gonna say that we found it. That way, if something does happen after finding the book name, we know that is a problem here and not elsewhere in our code. And we can do the same thing for these others. So we're going to do that. Of course, changing these things. And finally, of course, we're going to print also that we found the thing. We're going to extract the price here to a variable just so we can then print it out. Found the book price. And this is going to be float price. Like that. So again, we're just adding in here the different things that we may need in order to understand what's going on through our program. So that's it. Make sure to not delete the colon there. That's going to be pretty useful. And then we are going to do this thing here. I'm just going to paste it from the code. Like that. Okay. Well, that is pretty much it for our logging. You could add some logging over to your menu if you want. It'll be fairly straightforward. There's not much logging to add in here. But we can do it just for completeness. Like that. And then we can add some logging when we try to print out. Like that. These are info messages because they're not really concerned with how the application is working or what it's doing. It's more like informative messages of what you did. So that's why I'm making them info messages. But again, this is all a matter of thinking about how you're going to look at your logs. If you're not going to look at your logs, of course, it maybe doesn't make so much sense to do any logging at all. And down here, we're going to do a debug message of terminating program. Okay, so now we can run our menu. This is going again through all of that logging for the connection handlers and, getting all the pages. And then we end up here. We can do something like B or C and then Q. Now, our logs file is going to be enormous. And by the way, these logs here are there from earlier because it's now 2142. So we are going down here. These are now, we're loading the books list. This is our program starting again. The second time we ran it. We're starting to get the HTTP connection. And you can see here that in the books page, we started parsing the content with BeautifulSoup. Then we started finding all the books in the page using that locator. And it seems like we succeeded. And then we say new book parser created from, and then we started printing out the parent. So here we have all our article and everything that is inside that parent that we're going to extract data from. And then we moved on to the next book parser. And so forth. And you can see there's quite a lot of these book parsers in here. There should be a couple of thousand, 1,000 exactly. And eventually you go down here and we say that we're finding the best books by rating. And then we're finding a book rating and we found it for a book. That was 3. Another book rating was 1 and so forth. So I'm sure you could add some more information here. Like the name of the book maybe, for which this was found. Then we were finding the price. And then we found the name and so forth for the other books that we were searching for. Notice that when we print, When we call the repr method of a book, that finds the name, the price, and the rating again. So there is definitely some duplication here in our logs. But you know, they give us all the information we need in order to understand exactly what happened. And if there was an error, for example, here, after we said finding book rating, we would know that the error is inside the rating property of our book parser. And we wouldn't have to like go searching anywhere. We'd know that something's gone wrong there. So the logs can be really useful, particularly when they stop in the middle of somewhere. You don't see your terminating program or anything. They just stop suddenly, and you know that you've encountered some problem there. You normally wouldn't read all the logs. There are 31,000 lines in here. You wouldn't read them. You would just look at them when there is a problem, and you'd see what has gone wrong. So having good logs is important, but sometimes, of course, particularly after we're done developing and we're sort of, confident of what's going on, we may want to decrease the logging level down to info so that we can look at the logs and, more or less see what happened at each point in time. So we can do that. Then I'm going to delete logs.txt. Let's delete that and run the menu again. And believe it or not, all this level of logging actually takes time. It slows down your application. So there's definitely something to be wary of when you do a lot of logging. Make sure that when your application is running and you need the performance, to not go too far. And here we have something here. I think my rating here was an info message, but it should have been, it should have been a debug. My bad. Sorry, this should have been a debug. I copy and pasted it from my notes and it was an info there. Let's delete that and run it again, just for you to look at what's happening there. And there we have it. There we have our logs, and as you can see, when we only print info, it's sort of very straightforward. We loading the books list, found the number of pages we're going through, then we found the best books by rating, and then we found them by price, and then that was it. Nothing else happened, really. I'm sure there are improvements that can be made to this. You'll want to log warning messages in moments when you think you might get warnings, like if you are on a try except block. In the except block, you'll probably want to log some sort of warning or error to tell you that there was an error that happened here, but you caught it, and so forth. And of course, in some cases, you cannot deal with an error because the error happened and your program cannot continue. And in those cases, you should log a critical error, critical message to say, the program crashed at this point. You should know about that. Okay, debug and info messages, not so useful in your logs. So normally you would be on warn and above when your application is running for users in the wild. When you're developing, debug and info can be very useful. Alright, that's it for this video. I just wanted to show you really quick how to get logging into your application. Again, give you a few examples of how the logging module works and how you can just put it in anywhere you want, and then some examples of looking at your logs and what sort of things you can find. That's it for this video, and I'll see you on the next one.
Focus on happiness. Happiness is the key, because there's so many people that you see either in this industry or just in life in general that are going through their days and may have everything they could ever want, but they're not happy. So you have to focus on what makes you happy and make decisions in your career, in your life, that make you happy. And saying no to things that are negative and saying no to things that you don't want to do. So I think that's my biggest piece of advice.
Hi and welcome back. In this video, I just wanted to give you a few words of warning for some of the pages you may try to scrape will not work. And the reason for that is JavaScript. So as I may have said before, JavaScript is a programming language that your browser executes, and it can be used for dealing with user interactions, for example. So when the user does something, maybe you get a window that appears on your screen, or a modal, or maybe you get some sort of alert, or something like that. In some cases, you press the login button, and then you get a nice window there where you can log in. And those sort of things can happen because there is some JavaScript code on the page that your browser can execute. Your browser can run it. However, when you download the page using the requests module, you don't have access to running the JavaScript because you don't have a browser, you don't have a JavaScript interpreter. So if the page relies on JavaScript to change the content, then it won't work with the requests module. And a word of warning is, some pages will actually be a blank page, and then the content is populated using JavaScript. So sometimes the page is completely blank, and it's a lot of JavaScript code in the background that's actually putting the content on the page. When you download the page using requests, all you'll see is a blank page because you cannot run the JavaScript. So if that happens to you, you know why it is. It's because there's JavaScript code in there. And the way you'll know that something's gone wrong is because you'll be able to inspect the page, you'll see a bunch of content, and that's great, but then when you download the page using requests, the contents of the page will look very different. You can do that you can see it just by printing it out in your Python code. And if it looks very different, it's because there's JavaScript code in there doing things. There are ways, of course, to launch a browser using Python and interact with websites using the browser, which is controlled by Python. But those are a bit more advanced, and I'll try to add content to cover that in the course, but it's not here at the time that I'm recording this video. It may be here by the time you're watching it. So nonetheless, you'll need to use something called Selenium if you want to interact with a page that uses JavaScript. So feel free to check the rest of the course, see if Selenium content's up, and if not, you can look online and see how you can use Selenium to do that. But that's only if the page you're interacting with has JavaScript. If it does not, like a lot of pages don't, feel free to continue using requests. It'll do exactly what you want. And in many cases, the pages will have JavaScript, but they will also be interactable with requests because the JavaScript will be used to add some sort of functionality, not necessarily to change the entire page. So give requests a go first. It's the simplest way of going about things. And if that doesn't work and you really need to interact with a page, look at Selenium in order to learn more. That's it for this video, and I'll see you on the next one.
In effect, you can do almost everything you want in life, but you can't do it at the same time. And if you can just dedicate yourself to one thing for even a year, and then the next thing for a year, you can do those 10 things. But if you try to do all 10 at once, you're gonna be burden's ass. You'll be like, should I do this? Should I do this? Or should I focus on this? Or should I focus on this? So don't be a donkey.